Make sure you watch in layman's terms. That was secret yeah.
Oh, layman's turn.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Make sure you be watching it. All right.
Freaks me out every time. Hey guys, welcome to Layman's Terms Podcast, the place where we talk about really big topics using the smallest words possible. I'm Danny the bartender.
And I'm Tommy the trash man.
And together we're just two guys trying to explain the ever-changing world around us the only way that we know how. And it's been a little bit, but we're back. I was on vacation and we've been doing some Netflix binging. Tommy recommended a couple of good ones to me. One was Malice at the Palace.
Yeah. So besides all that, man, I was just saying, as soon as I saw you on Zoom, I was like, look at you, man. You look like a brand new guy. So how was Austin?
Austin, Texas, was amazing. It was it was really cool to go down to a new place all by yourself. It was my birthday, so I wanted to just go somewhere completely alone, which I like to do sometimes. I don't know, and just kind of see what I can do, you know. And made a good amount of like friends. I made some quality people. They took me out for my birthday, which was pretty cool. And you got to remember, like I knew zero people going down there, so it was pretty neat. I drank a lot of bourbon. I was a bourbon boy down there. Yeah.
Yes.
Very cheap bourbon. Most of your shit is like, I mean, I wasn't drinking cheap bourbon, but I was drinking like Buffalo Trace was like $7 at like a nice place, you know?
I just catered a party last week and I had it for the first time.
It's good.
It's good.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. They had that and Blanton's, which Blanton's is expensive.
Yeah, Blanton's is awesome because the little fucking guy on the top of the bottle.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I would say they're almost neck and neck. I mean, for the price of Blanton's and the price of Buffalo Trace.
Well, Buffalo Trace is the oldest American bourbon. It's the oldest still in operation distillery for bourbon. And Blanton's, I don't even know where Blanton's exactly is from or whatever, but I know that Blanton's not too long ago had something happen before the pandemic where, believe it or not, I guess you'd have to look this up to see, but there was like a fire at the distillery. And it went from being like an expensive and a little bit of a rare bourbon to like a very hard to get bourbon. So it really made people like start asking for it more and more.
Yeah. So you turned 40, right?
33.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, no, I'm 40.
This was the big 4-0, bro.
Yeah. And isn't that weird? Like, I'll tell you where I'm a weirdo. It was like, I just didn't want to, I was like, you know what? I don't want to be around the same old shit. I'd rather be by myself somewhere else. Oh, and what am I talking about too? There were so many cool things. Dude, I went and saw comedy, like just open mic comedy was just so amazing down there. You can just go anywhere. And like the list for the people trying to be on open mic, like if you tried to go to an open mic, say even in Philly, even a big place like Philly, you would go to the bar that's doing it that night or the comedy club, like say Helium. And even then you would have a majority of like quasi amateur, like quasi, middle of the road comedians just trying to work out their shit, but they would still have they'd be kind of pushing to get people on the book. Like they'd have like an hour to do it and they'd do like 5-minute sets and they'd be hoping more people join up. Dude, this place, I sat from 7 o'clock till about 12 o'clock and they weren't even halfway through the book of people that were just doing sets. And you don't watch Kill Tony. Do you know anything about Kill Tony or Tony Hinchcliffe?
A little bit. I mean, I saw some clips.
Well, I'm a big fan of Kill Tony, and all of the people that are on Kill Tony, like I've sat and talked to them. You know what I mean? Like they were all there where I was at, and it was really cool. I don't know if you saw that book that I shared on our Instagram, but that's a book you get when you do Kill Tony. So if you do Kill Tony, you get that book, and the dude was next to me. I'm like, bro, I gotta take a picture of that book. That was pretty neat.
What do you mean if you do kill Tony? What do you mean?
So Kill Tony is a podcast, but it's a live comedy show. Right. So Tony Hinchcliffe and Red Band from Rogan do this show. It's the #1 comedy podcast. I guess when you say comedy podcast, that Rogan isn't a comedy podcast. He's a podcast. So they basically set up in like it started in LA at the Comedy Store, and they set up a table, and they usually have like one celebrity guest, and then it's Red Band that does all the audio and stuff, and Tony Hinchcliffe's the host, and they'll have like they pull out of a hat and they pick random people to come up and do a minute set. They'll do their minute set, and then they kind of get roasted by Tony Hinchcliffe and whatever the celebrity comedian is. And then if the dude's relatively like if there's something to him, you know, then they become kind of like a regular where they don't have to wait to be pulled out of the hat. So he'll do like 10 or so people a night, and probably 3 or 4 of them aren't picked out of a hat. They're people that he told to come back the next week or whatever. And so all of these, because you got to think like that whole group of people that I was watching do stand up are the same group of people that probably go and try and do his show, because he moved the show to Austin when Rogan moved to Austin.
Okay.
So that show is at the Vulcan Gas Company every Monday. And it's basically pulling from the same Austin comedians. And so basically, if you go to an open mic around there, you're getting to see these people that have now somewhat become celebrities, even though they're only just starting to headline and stuff, and they're coming there to work out their stuff. So basically, if you're one of the people that go up and you do it and he likes you, he asks you if you got a book. And if you say no, he'll give you this leather bound book, which is just for you to joke right in. So you would see these guys walking around with the leather bound Kill Tony books. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
So now this is the second time you flew since COVID, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
that was the second time. The last time I flew out of the country, kind of. I flew to Puerto Rico, which is not necessarily out of the country, but they kind of treat it as such.
Right. So now, are there any like COVID procedures getting on the flight to Texas?
Everything was relatively normal, except for the constant reminder that like there was a possibility that shit could change. Like basically when you're getting your airline tickets, it's like, here's the procedures as of now. Please sign this agreement saying you understand that they could change any moment. So what that might have meant was like, I could be in Austin, and then all of a sudden it could be like, if you want to go back home, you need to get the vaccine.
Well, that would be pretty crazy.
I would have been like, great. Now I got a reason to stay here. But no, it was really, really, really cool. I mean, like in fairness, I really only like did the first day out. Oh, by the way, I had, I don't know if I texted you this, but man, I had something amazing. I fucking had, there's a place called Lucy's Fried Chicken, and I'm not saying that they're amazing. There's probably, because there's 100 places I could have got stuff from. But I was like, man, I want to try some of this like fried shit while I'm here or something. So I was just looking for something that I could have, and I got fried deviled eggs. Oh my God.
Really?
Yeah, it was insane. Imagine like a good, like a breading, like that would be on chicken in a sense, just around a deviled egg. It was almost like it wasn't like the deviled egg was even fried. It was just sitting in the middle of this thing.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It was delicious. It was incredible. It's fucking incredible.
I love the scent. Well, I mean, I love deviled eggs.
Well, you'd love this deviled egg.
Yeah, of course. So
yeah,
what else?
I think I got like fried catfish or something. It was fucking delicious.
Okay. I mean, because they're kind of like notorious for barbecue and all, I guess, right?
Yeah, and unfortunately, I guess I couldn't try it. But the other thing that was cool is there's this area called Rainy Street, which I don't know if I sent you pictures or whatever, but it was really intense because I guess the cool thing about Austin that I thought was very different compared to here for like bar wise was every bar was like set up in a way where it was like open space. So I wasn't even thinking this, but I'm guessing it doesn't rain a lot in Austin, like at all. And so most of the bars you went to, you would go in and the bar area would be small. And then they would like direct you to like the back area. And like for example, the place where I went and saw comedy, you walk in and it's this cool little swanky bar that was like really cool, you know, like different, cool. It was called the Lucky Duck. And then you got directed right out to like the patio, which was like a lawn almost. And you go outside, and then in the back of the bar, they had a food truck and another bar that was just like kind of sitting there, kind of like a standalone situation, like a food, like instead of getting food from a kitchen, you just walked up to the food truck, you know, that was in the back of the bar. And that wasn't unique to just that place. It seemed like every bar you went to, like I went to this place called the Blind Pig, and like downstairs was a real cool bar. And then all of a sudden you go upstairs and it's an open air. So you're basically on the rooftop of the place, and it had a bar, and every bar had, and I noticed this in anywhere you go, but it's only in like interesting places. Like Philly don't really do it because we're just bar people. Like you go in, you go to a bar, you just want to see a cool bar. But in most places where they just compete with each other, they all try and, you know, get the same thing that the other place does. So like they all had like you know, those like Dave and Buster's like basketball games and shit, like, you know, you're playing basketball and you get to play somebody next to you or something.
Right.
Like every bar somewhere in it had like a basketball thing, a fucking, you know, like some type of other cool game you could play, you know, a crane that, you know, one of those little crane games. Like it was just like every place had to have like a bunch of activities and be prepared for an outdoor concert at all times, you know, which was pretty neat. And so when you go to some of them bars, it was like just really like some of the bars on Rainy Street were like just containers packed up on top of each other and stuff. But now Rainy Street, I believe, is a new area.
What do you mean containers? Like shipping containers?
Yes. Like I'm talking about, like you go, like every bar seemed to have like a house that was like, at least this is on Rainy Street anyway. Every bar seemed to be like, here's a house that we turned into like a bar. Okay. And then because we bought the property next to it, we just threw like one place actually did it in a way where they incorporated the containers as in to be part of the architecture of it. But other places you don't realize that that's a container now turned into like an outdoor kitchen. But one particular bar, it was like all these containers were kind of stacked on top of each other. And they were basically like different levels of areas to kind of lounge. And it went up like 3 or 4 stories. It's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty dope. I mean, I follow like on Pinterest, like I love the idea of shipping containers like turned into houses. And in Philly, down on Delaware Ave, like they have an outside area and all. I don't know if you've been down there. Or not on Delaware, like right by the waterfront.
Yeah, but you're talking about bars, or are you talking about?
Well, so they have.
I know there's a deck down there that's owned by people that I kind of know, and it became popular about 10 years ago.
So what they did was basically I forget exactly what they called it, but it's down by the waterfront, and they just put a bunch of shipping containers down there, and they opened them up so like you can get popcorn.
No, peanuts, I never saw that.
And like, but they have, you know, draft beer. So it's all outside, and then they got hammocks. They have gigantic, like a chessboard, like with like 4 feet tall pieces where you can kind of mess around with. All the trees have like really nice lights hanging from them. I forget exactly what they call it, but they opened it up a couple years ago.
But that actually sounds kind of like Rainy Street. It probably like, but that's how it was. It was like if you went into a bar, there'd be a container in the back on the lawn that was selling food, and then like it wouldn't be weird to see like a giant chessboard on the ground or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, dude, it's great because they're cheap. Well, relatively cheap. It's much cheaper than doing like brand new construction. And if it's just an outside area, all you got to do is throw, you know, a little bar in there. Like it's pretty simple setup.
And then I guess too, if you have the luxury of not really having bad weather, like I was literally sitting there the whole time, like thinking 90% of this bar is outside. So I don't know why I didn't. I mean, I'm positive that probably a lot of people understand that it probably doesn't rain there a lot. But I was the only way that I started thinking about it was I'm like, if this bar, like if it rains here once in a while or just as much as anywhere else, you wouldn't even be able to operate this bar 95% of the time, or 95% of your bar, excuse me. But dude, the other funny part is that there would be, so Rainy Street must be relatively new, because then there would be, which, you know, I'll send you pictures of it later, is right in between like two fucking awesome bars. There would be a house that was like falling apart, and you would think like, all right, they're good, like, you know, it's abandoned, but now there'd be like fucking 3 pickup trucks and a big van, like fucking 18 looking van, like disheveled with like the trunk open, like a guy was just working on it. And I'm like, this guy's held out, dude. Like, it was kind of cool to see like what had probably happened to Austin, which is starting to scare me too, because it's like I want to go there, but at the same time, I'm starting to get nervous. Like, if you'd have went there last year, you probably could have got a house on fucking Rainy Street for probably 200 grand or something. Now, like, I understand that everything's going to go up and stuff like that, but like, if it's really becoming like LA, like I was reading like all these famous people moving there. Dude, the hotel I stayed at was called the Fairmount Austin. It was absolutely incredible. But the other thing too is just, I guess the main thing that I really liked was like, dude, I went and sat in it. Like, first off, like I said, I met people, whatever. I went and sat in when I went to first off, the first thing I did was I went to this bar called Unbarleavable, which was really interesting. I didn't get to see it too much, but I went in there at night at about like 12:30 on my first night there. And, you know, so it was just packed with like young kids, which whatever, like all beautiful women, beautiful dudes, like not trying to be gay, but it was like everybody in there was like different caliber human being. And, but it was called Unbarleavable because like when you walked in, it was like they just had like they had this set up like as if it was a circus for some reason, but yet it was a cool bar. And so when you were inside at the bar, which was like an old cottage house turned into a bar, when you go sit inside, the actual inside looked like the inside of a circus tent. Like they had like the ceiling looked like a circus tent or something. And they had all these games and shit. And I kind of thought like, oh, that's this bar. And then you go again, same thing. Like you go in the backyard, they had like skee ball out there and just like lawn chairs. Like there was no real furniture. It was like, here's a swanky, cool bar. And the way it worked was like, if you want to go hang outside and drink a beer, you just grab a lawn chair and throw it somewhere and shit. I'm like, this is awesome. Yeah. And, you know, and I went up to the bartender. I started talking to the bartender, and like drinks were so cheap that like I tipped the shit out of the guy. But technically, I mean, I think I gave him like $20 on 18, but at the same time, I mean, I had like 3 or 4 drinks, you know, which was kind of like, I felt like very happy to throw $20 at the guy. Yeah. And, but so he, you know, I know as a bartender, it's like, if you want to start bullshitting with the bartender, well, you better make sure you give him a reason to, you know? And so I was like, hey man, what's a good place around here? And he suggested I go to this place called the Blind Pig, which everybody that I talk to tells me, oh, that's a shithole kind of environment. But I also know from being a bartender, like if that dude told me to go there, it's like, that's where these people go, you know, like right. They go there, whether it's a shithole or not, because they just get done work and they don't want to fucking be part of all the other shit. Right. So I went there, and like instantaneously people just coming over to me, talking to me. Some girl gave me her phone, like just like literally just walked over and like took my phone and was like, let me give you my information for when you come back down. And, but what I also thought was funny was these people were liberal, but then when I told them I was coming here, like when I was like, yeah, I want to come back here in Austin and all, they were like, do me a favor. We like our freedoms. So don't turn this place into,
don't California my Texas.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's fucking crazy. See, I understand that coming from like a Republican Texan, but so that's what I thought was interesting too, was the people that I met, the way I met the people that I ended up hanging out with on my birthday was I was upstairs at this bar, and there was this black dude and a couple of like Hispanic dudes, and they were talking to the bartender, and I just picked up on the bartender saying like, fuck that, I ain't getting vaxxed. And these guys are saying the same thing. So I was like, you know, just kind of, I'm like, this is the conversation I want to get into here. I want to see how these people feel about it. Right. And basically, like, I don't even know what their politics were, honestly, because I'm not in a Republican town, you know? And they were like, fuck that shit. I ain't getting no vax, whatever. Then I'm telling them, like, hey, they're about to start pushing that shit where I'm at. Well, it turns out the guys like they were like bar managers and owners and stuff.
Yeah.
And they were like, we ain't doing that shit, blah, blah. But also at the same time, I'm not gonna lie, I think I kind of got a leg in for, and you might see the guy follow or like some of our stuff. His name's, I think it's Graylin or something like that. But, real cool dude, took me out the whole night. And, I met him the next night after the comedy, and we went to a couple places, and like, you know, I just met the dude. There was like nobody in the bar. We were hanging out. He's like, yeah, come in the bar. And every bar we walked into, people were like fucking running across the room and like jumping on him and shit. And I was like, dude, who the fuck am I hanging out with? The fucking king of Austin? And he's like, well, they call me the mayor of Austin. I was like, okay, sounds great to me. But yeah, so I just had a good, I don't know, for me too, like regardless if anything comes out of anything, I just always like to see, like, you know, you're going, like, I went somewhere and took a chance. I went somewhere for my birthday, and I could have really quickly ended up just sitting in a bar stool by myself, crying into a beer. You know what I mean? Right. Instead, I had an amazing time. So a lot of homeless, a lot of fucking homeless, but it's regular homeless. I can deal with homeless. With homeless people, you just gotta, like, the homeless people test you, you know? Hey, can I get a cigarette? No, they just leave. If you say yeah, then they ask you for $1. You give them $1, then they're like, I'll suck your dick. You're like, no, thanks. but I mean, like, I could deal with that, you know, but definitely a lot of them. Like, I would be standing outside the Austin Hotel, which is a beautiful hotel, and it's actually off the beaten path. So there would be no real reason for this to happen. But like, people would come by and shit, and you start looking over, and they're like picking up cigarettes off the fucking ground. There's a lot of homeless.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was a lot in Virginia. When we went down to Virginia Beach, we noticed there was a decent amount.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that I'm not even comparing the two or whatever, but like there might be just as many homeless in Virginia Beach. Cause you are right. Like, we've seen whatever, like when you walk by, you've seen them, whatever, but I would say that very different even than Baltimore is like, there's homeless to the point where if you're standing outside a bar for 10 seconds, like, somebody's going to be asking you for money.
Right.
You know what I mean? Which is how I even found out. Like, I didn't know my first night down there. I didn't even know, like, can you smoke in bar? I don't know what the fuck's going on, you know? And I was standing outside the bar after having like a drink or two, and I kept getting hounded by homeless people. And when I went back inside the bar, the bartender was like, yo, bro, you know, you can just go upstairs. And I was like, there's an upstairs. And I went up, and it was just like this totally awesome environment that was outdoor. Like, you could lean over the thing and you're looking at the whole street from above, you know. It was pretty neat. But it was like, you could see that, like, they don't, like, one thing I thought was funny was, because of the environment, I guess this would be kind of like a liberal kind of thing. I mean, smoking has gone out the window in most places. Like, personally, I hate that I started back up. However, I've noticed that now, as opposed to 10 years ago, that when you go, like, I'm going to go smoke, it's like nobody wants to come with you. They don't give a fuck if you got to walk around the corner.
Right.
Whereas in Austin, it was like I would go, like, where can you smoke? And the guy's like, anywhere you feel comfortable. But like, just maybe not in that little. So remember I said everything's made up where it's like there's always this giant outside. So it's like, you know, at that bar, they literally have it set up. So like, if you want to smoke, just go upstairs to the giant bar that has an outside, or sit down here if you don't want to. Or at the comedy thing, same way. Like, everybody's all over the lawn. And like, there wasn't a massive amount of smokers, but yet at the same time, there was people smoking in the middle of every little crowd, and no one cared. You know what I mean? Like, to me, that would be like if you're in an environment and you're the smoker and you're around liberals that don't smoke, they're going to shun you the fuck out of there. You know what I mean? Or just people that smoke, you know, maybe not to attack them, but I mean, that it just seemed more like, hey, the guy smokes. No one was looking to fucking tell me anything different. But I guess the only reason why I brought it up was I would stand outside the bars, like, at first, because I didn't realize, I actually felt uncomfortable, because I'm like, I'm not going to just light up in front of all these. Like, I'm sitting watching a show and nobody's smoking. I'm just going to light a smoke. So I would walk through and go out to the front. Dude, every time I did that, not because I look like a bouncer, but probably because nobody stands outside and smokes like we see at every bar that we know.
Yeah.
I would be standing outside and a dude be rolling up and he'd be like, "Hey man, I forgot my ID." I'm like, "Bro, I'm just having a cigarette, bro." Just
Right.
like, and that's when like the bartenders were kind of like, it was almost like, get the fuck from out front of my bar, go inside,
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of cool.
Dude, I gotta be honest with you. I think that's dope as hell that they were coming up to you and like, yo, like, yeah, it's we're like liberal here, but like we like our freedom.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And that's exactly how a lot of places should be. Like, just because I'm liberal, like, doesn't mean like I appreciate that they understand the values and the culture of what Texas is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
the first girl that told me that was corporate sales for Grubhub.
right.
Like probably one of those environments where, and she wasn't vaxxed. And she was a little nervous about that because she works in a very, like she was liberal and saying, I work in a very liberal corporation that seems to be more liberal than her,
Right.
But I guess the whole thing was you could sit and talk about the vax and it didn't matter. You know what I mean? You weren't like in a secret society.
Right.
You could just sit and talk about, like, if I was to be like liberals were like, yeah, this shit's crazy with the fucking censorship,
Yeah.
like, yeah, it is.
Well, because again, there's a deep appreciation for freedom. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, and you can still have appreciation for America, for appreciation for personal choice, appreciation for freedom, but still be like, hey, like I totally support, whatever progressive or liberal, movements that you want to say. You know what I mean? There can be balance there. I mean, that's really middle of the road people. That's how things should be, but somehow it's kind of drifted off into like extremes on both sides.
Yeah, it also seemed too like, because what's funny is I met a lot of people and I got into conversation with a lot of people because of probably, I would say, that second night I went out for my birthday. I feel like the dude had thought that I had lost my job because of the vax. And I was like, no, I said, it looks like they're going to start doing that. Yeah. So at one point I was like paying for something. He's like, yo, I got you, bro. And I'm like, no, I got a job, bro. I'm good. And, but so there was a lot of people that he would talk to and kind of, he would say to them like right up front, like, hey, this dude's coming here because the rules are getting whatever. So I got a lot, like, remember, I mean, it's a town that voted like 75% Democrat,
Yeah.
But I would get in immediate conversations with people that I met, and I would kind of have that fear that I would have if it was in Baltimore or somewhere, more like over here, where I'm like, I'd be a little like, it's almost like too revealing. Like if I'm saying I don't want the max, the next question's going to be, what are you, a fucking Trump supporter? You know what I mean?
Right.
But the weird part was you could have these conversations and people could disagree slightly, but agree. And, and nobody bothered to go like, so like, I guess what I'm saying is I never asked anybody who they voted for. They never asked me. It didn't matter. Well, you know what I mean? And nobody was like, let's get away from this dude. He just started talking. And it's really weird because it was nice to meet people like that again, because I feel like that's the thing that starts to make me feel socially awkward up here is things can instantaneously get weird. And then it's like, oh, here we go. Like you're just telling somebody about your life. Like, what are you doing up here? And I'm like, well, I'm going to move up here because X, Y, and Z. Maybe the vax gets mentioned. Maybe politics gets mentioned. And nobody like takes the conversation anywhere other than just having the conversation. Whereas up here, next thing you know, you're in the corner wondering why all them people you were just talking to are now on the other side of the bar and fucking not coming, Right. And it wasn't like that at all. It was just like, great meeting you. And then, how like, to me, it's like kind of like a solidifies, you walk away from a situation going, they probably think I was weird. And like, a couple people followed me on Instagram, a couple people friended me on Facebook, other people who I have their phone numbers and stuff texted me like, yo, when you come up, make sure you talk, make sure you hit me up, blah, blah, blah. And so it's pretty cool.
Did you wear a Laymen Terms t-shirt?
No, it's my birthday.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I would have been sporting that.
Yeah, but I was only out one night. I didn't want to go out and be like, this is what I'm all about.
Wait,
I also had no clue. Like, in other words, I had no clue what it ain't like I knew. Like, I was very like, fuck, this is going to be weird. You know,
you only went out one night.
I went out 2 nights, but I when I first got there, bro, I was so tired. I passed out and woke up pretty late. And so that's what I was saying. Like, I went my first night there. I went to that unbelievable place at like 12 o'clock. And then at like 12:45 was like, where can I go next? And the dude sent me to the other place. So I basically in my head had 2 hours to solidify that I had a good birthday. So I went out.
Were they open later than
no, 2 o'clock, but.
Well, you guys aren't even open until 2 o'clock anymore, right?
No. So yes, I mean, I guess technically, but they have the old Philly rule. But Philly so basically the Philly rule is you can do last call up till 1:45. You can't serve anything after 1:45 and you have to like 2:30 to get everyone out.
Yeah.
But every bar kind of operates like we want everybody out by 2.
Right.
And I remember when I first realized that Philly's law was you actually had till 2:30 to get people out, that I was like, oh, I thought it was like 2, you know? Mm-hmm. But in Austin, they have that same Philly rule, but their attitude is kind of like, but you can hang. So I could get a beer at fucking 5 or 2 and then sit there as long as I leave until at 2:30. Like they kick you out at 2:30, but technically if you asked anybody what time do bar close, they'd tell you 2 o'clock.
And no after hour spots or anything like that?
Well, it wouldn't have mattered. But remember, I was hanging out with that dude.
Yeah.
I mean, we must have went to like 30 bars, and then at the very last bar, I'm pretty sure, like basically, it was already like 2:45, and I was sitting in this bar with him and a couple people, and I went outside the bar, and the fucking bouncers just closed the door, and all I probably had to do was text a dude or something, but I was like, I've had enough anyway. I gotta get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. But then he was texting me like, where the hell did you go? I mean, I'm sure there's after hours. Another thing that was cool was the dude was introducing me to the cops that were on 6th Street. And it was something that I really haven't seen in a while, which was while we were talking to them, all of a sudden they got like fixated on something. And I was still talking to the one dude, and the dude I was with was like, yeah, chill out. They're about to go do something. And I looked over and they were like, is that a fight? Is that not a fight? And then it turned out to not be a fight. So they didn't go over. But I thought in my head, like, I don't know if this would make sense to you. Maybe it's different in Philly. But like, dude, they wouldn't even engage in Baltimore. Like, they don't engage. Like, a little 2 people yelling at each other outside of a bar, cops don't fucking walk over until somebody's punching somebody in the face. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I realized like there's probably no fucking around down here. And then I even thought like one thing I may have to think about when I go there is like, you know, in Baltimore, if you had a couple of drinks and you're like, I probably shouldn't be driving home or whatever else. I bet you that shit don't fly down. Like, in other words, they just the same as they don't engage with stuff. Like, people are just running fucking red lights and whatever else. I bet you in Texas, you can't fucking do that shit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, dude, I mean, obviously I have no grounds to speak on this, but I feel like the fact up north, even in Texas and in Austin, if you have your liberal areas up north, you got your liberal areas, and it's like, dude, it's still chaos. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It's just like, it's kind of a reflection of the people that you talk to. Like, hey, like, yeah, I'm liberal. I believe in these things, but I also still believe in my freedom. With that freedom, you need some law and order.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, dude, another thing I kept thinking about you for that you would have maybe loved was, you know how like I'd be in a bar where there was just like a there was a live band or there was a whatever. And you know how like in between, because I didn't go to too many. Well, I did later, but at first it was creaking up on me. You know what I mean? And I was like I kept hearing rap songs that I'm like, man, not only have I not heard that in a while, but it's something like, you remember that song, Wanna Be a Baller, Shot Caller, 20-inch blades on the Impala, Caller getting laid tonight. Well, that came on, and then like DMX came on. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. It's kind of like a throwback shit. And then I'm like, no, this is just so like I go in another bar and like in between some dude's set, like they would just play the radio and it was like that kind of hip hop. And then it would be like Outkast. And then like finally when I was hanging out with that dude, we went to another bar and we went into like a nightclub atmosphere where they were playing that shit.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, I don't really know crazy amounts of it. Like, is this people playing like old school hip hop? I just, it's a weird thing for me because I think your hip hop's amazing, but maybe people are just playing. And the dude just looked at me and said, this is the South, baby. This is what we like. And I'm like, okay, all right. Pretty cool.
Well, I was thinking, maybe this is a bad comparison, but like when I went to Vegas, it was 2010 and they were playing a lot of like really old shit, like big, like no matter where you went, it was like big hits, like big Usher hits and big club hits, big rap hits. But at the time they were old.
But that's 100% what this was.
You know what I'm saying? So to me, it was kind of weird because I'm like, bro, they're playing a lot of like, you're hearing a lot of the same shit and it's like old.
Yeah.
But it's like because it's Vegas, it's kind of like it's like top 50 album songs. You know what I mean? Like it's all like big hits that everybody knows.
Well, so this is what I thought when I like that's what I was saying. Like when I first heard a couple of them. Well, this is the other part too. That song that I was just saying, I forget what the hell it is, but that song that I kind of sung a bit of or whatever. That's a song that I remember liking, and it also wasn't, even though it was good and even though it was maybe at the top of the charts at one point, it was from a group that like not a lot of people cared about, or there were people in that. It was from a mixtape or something. 8-Ball was one of the dudes. But anyway, at first I thought exactly like you're saying, but it wasn't until I went into basically like an all black fucking nightclub. I think what I actually heard when I walked in there was like an Usher song, and it was all kids in their 20s. And so in other words, like this dude wasn't catering to a tourist crowd. He wasn't catering to a white crowd. He wasn't just playing the top 50. He was a DJ, like mixing it up and it was always some type of old school mix. And that's when I looked at the dude and I'm like, listen, I'm like, I've been biting my tongue on this, but why do I love this hip hop so much? And he kept saying to me, like, it's just our hip hop or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm like, I can't explain it, dude, but this is not what's playing. And then he was just like, this is the South, baby. This is what we like. I'm like, okay, all right. Sounds good to me.
So impression that are you excited about moving down there? Like you feel pretty good about it?
100%. I'm nervous though, because I'm starting to get nervous because I'm wondering if this vax shit is gonna, like, I don't know how much, like, I literally left and started thinking I definitely want to be in Austin. Definitely want to go there. There's no reason for me to go anywhere else. And because there's, like, in other words, I don't want to go to Texas because I just want to go to Texas. I want to go to Austin because, as I said on here, I believe like the first podcast, Joe Rogan moved there, and there's a comedy and podcast renaissance going on in that town,
right? Which
is now becoming a film renaissance because like all these kind of mid-level actors are moving there now too. And but then I like backed away and I'm like, but I'm kind of still going there to be safe from all this bullshit. And even though the people seem to not care too much, I still think I might get in a situation where like you can't get a job unless you're fucking vaxxed, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And so I'm getting nervous. And then I'm thinking like maybe I should go to Dallas. Well, the thing that got me nervous was, I'm slightly offensive, Eliza Shaver.
Okay.
Like you follow him. I see you follow some of his stuff.
Yeah, right.
Well, I like tweeted out to him under one of his things, like, yeah, I just came back from Austin and I'm thinking about moving there. You think this is dumb because of the mask things? And he basically, what I thought was interesting was he got back to me, but he was like, he's like, they're pretty liberal about it, whatever, but I think they're all going to fold at some point. And then the very next day, him and that girl that he does the show with, we're doing man on the street interviews of people in Austin, Texas about the masks and vax. And the people like, how do you feel about it? And people were like, I'm fine with it. I'm okay with it. I think it should turn that way. But I've kind of changed my mindset of like, I'm just trying to prepare myself to go there. Like it's a 4-month vacation. Like I'm going there with the mindset of like maybe I won't work, Right. Like I'm going to go down there. I want to do this comedy podcast thing where I want to interview all these comedians like on the side or whatever. And I want to maybe try to write something and then do our podcast as well. And then I want to try and get you to come out there for a week and visit and we'll see what happens. But
we'll see what happens.
Yeah. But no, like, so in other words, the way I look at it is like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to immerse myself in comedy for 4 months. And if nothing comes out of it, I'll know that when Austin is a big deal in 10 years that I was there, and maybe I'll even have, like, cause I got the idea about like kind of interviewing these guys and all, because I seen some other guy that was like kind of he's a comedian. He's like documenting himself. And one of the things he says is, there's such a boom in comedy right now, and all these people are going to be under like Rogan's eye, that any one of these people could be in 10 years the next big thing, Yeah. And so it would kind of be like, in my mind, like if I go down there and I interview like 100 fucking comedians, 10 of them might end up being the biggest comedian. Like could be a Kevin Hart in 10 years. And it'd just be cool to be like, I got an interview with that guy when he was just started,
Right. So if you were going to rate the women, Dave Portnoy style, right? One look, everybody knows the rules. What do you give the women? The majority.
An 8.
An 8?
An 8.
Yeah?
And put it this way, because when they're a 10, they're a 10.
Bro, I don't give anybody a 10.
But here's the thing. What I'm saying is when they're a 10, they're a 10. But also what it is there where I got to go 8 is like, there'll be a girl who is more sexy. I don't want to say than she deserves, because of course she deserves it. But there'll be a girl who like is dressed kind of like a fucking liberal hippie, but then has a fucking like full fucking, what do they call that? Sleeve.
Right.
And she's kind of doing her own fucking thing. And then you talk to her and she's like a liberal, but with a fucking conservative attitude. And she's awesome. You know what I mean? And so
the accent wasn't doing it for you.
But I wouldn't even say that there was too much of an accent. It was just
there was no Texas like swang.
Not really. I'm sure there is. Well, dude, another thing too, when I was leaving, I wanted to blow my brains out. When I was leaving, I basically had I picked to leave at 5:00 because I was like, I don't really care about getting back soon and I don't want to rush out,
Right.
And I was standing outside the hotel debating whether to go to the pool, which I ended up going to the pool for a couple hours before I left. And so like 2 times, one time it was a girl that was there from the night before, smoking hot girl, literally from Virginia, but was like traveling around for some reason. And she came over because we had talked slightly the day before, and all of a sudden she like literally came over. She's like, "Hey, I want to give you my phone number," blah, blah. I'm like, "All right, there you go." But then she's like, "What are you doing tonight?" Like basically it was like she wanted to hang out. And then I'm like, "I'm leaving,"
Right.
Then right after that, literally like 10 minutes after that, I see this car full of girls pull up in like a Range Rover, right? And the valet like takes their car, but they were like looking at me because I was smoking a cigarette. I didn't understand what was going on at first. So they got out and they're like, yeah, see, I told, they were like, we didn't think we could smoke outside this hotel. And I was like, oh my God, well, thank God, because you scared the shit out of me. Because I'm like, I'm looking at the three of you looking in the window going, there he is. And I'm thinking, what the fuck did I do last night? But anyway.
You're the fucking Philly Fabio.
Yeah, but so anyway, they were, dude, I mean, if you could imagine in your head what a Texas MILF is, you know?
Yeah.
These were 3 Texas MILFs, like got out with their fucking hats on. The one bitch was like sleeved up and was like, we're here for the weekend to party. And fucking, you know, what are you doing? We're going to the pool, blah, blah. And again, I had to be like, I'm leaving, you know? I'm leaving. And I'm going to tell you something right now. I sat there and was like, I'm calling out of work. But by my mind, my eyes was on the prize, because what I'm realizing now, and I was realizing then, was like, you know, I don't want to spend too much money in between now and when I go there, because my whole, you know, so I'm thinking in my head, like, if I change my flight, stay one more night, I'm probably going to end up paying like full price for this hotel, $200 to change my flight. Then I got to go out again. I'm like, right now, just, you know, don't act impulsively and just fucking get your shit together and fucking come back here and live here. And you know, my whole thought process is, if I could pay for it up front, like they got Airbnbs that are anywhere from $700 to $1,200 a month.
Yeah. I
was even looking like Expedia, bro. You can get like, I could stay at the hotel I was at for like $3,000 a month.
Oh,
I mean, I don't.
Well, that's a little bit. I mean, if you can get a B&B for $700.
No, exactly.
That's a big difference.
Exactly. But what I'm saying is, worse came to worse, you know, it might, like, let's just say, because I keep changing the trip in my head. Like, nothing has to be permanent. Like, I don't have to go there in November. And now I am. And that's the whole plan. But I'm saying there's a lot of things starting to get me nervous, you know, like for example, I might not be able to work until November because things are getting, you know, pretty touchy feely here. I mean, I don't know if I think I was telling you, but like, you know, there's a lot of mandates going on, and I drew my line in the sand, dude. I'm not doing it. I don't care. It's even at the point now where it's like, I made up my mind, bro. This isn't right. And it's more, you know, I don't want to get too much into like a COVID conversation, but I was literally even thinking today, like, I'm no longer fearful of the virus. Like, remember me and you were talking about like how we're weighing out the risk, and the risk analysis in my head hasn't reached, you know, like we were saying, like, if you're looking out the door and people are dying from the disease, maybe I would, you know, okay, I got to get this thing or whatever. But, you know, we looked at all these factors, and it doesn't mean I'm right or wrong. It's just like I haven't reached the threshold of being scared of it. And now what I just realized today was I haven't even, because sometimes I have to remind myself, like, dude, what if you get it? You know, you scared? And I have to then remind myself, like, bro, with what I'm watching go on around me, my fear has, like, if you want a risk analysis, like what I think is more detrimental to my health right now and my well-being, what's more detrimental to my health and my well-being are the reaction and the media push against me. Like, I'm more scared of of what kind of stuff they're trying to do to the unvaxxed than I am of the disease, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And so I'm just like, no, I'm sorry, no. And I say this like, hey man, you'll have it here to say it. If I die from it, so be it. I'm not saying that I want to. And yeah, you can put me on CNN as the fucking another article where it's like guy who recently denied it, whatever. I don't care. That's not what this is about anymore. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I never said it couldn't. But what I'm saying is, this is, you haven't changed my mind. And now you moved me into a place where I'm more fearful of the people trying to force this on me than the thing itself. And I don't care. And if by chance I get it and it's horrible and I get fucked up from it or die from it or whatever else, that doesn't mean that I was an idiot. It means that maybe the risk was higher for me personally, but I still stand by the fact that it shouldn't be. And that if you look at like, if we both watched Rogan's thing today, did you see the numbers of deaths? Did you see that little chart they put up?
No, I was listening to it, but I wasn't watching it.
Well, so you see, dude, I thought right away, I was like, I didn't know how to get that chart to you without like going up to the TV and rewinding and taking a picture or something. But dude, they show the chart. So say 600,000 people died so far of COVID. It was 300,000 people over the age of 85, which is like over apparently 78 is the average the average life expectancy in America.
Yeah.
So 300,000 people were 7 years over the life expectancy, right?
Right.
Then it was like the criteria below that was like 60-year-olds, and it was like 180,000 or, whatever. And then the criteria below that was like 50 to whatever, and it was like 80, 90,000. And then right when it went to like 40 to 50, it was like 19,000. And then it went down and it was like 7,000, whatever. And then Rogan was like, and it was 4 times whatever you call that when somebody has another disease. So in other words,
they have comorbidities.
Comorbidity. So even that, it was like 4 times comorbidity. So if you were 85 years old, you had like 4 times comorbidity. If you were 40 years old, you had 4. So it isn't even like 19,000 people died just from getting COVID. It was like 19,000 people died, and most likely were fat people, sick people, people with diabetes. And listen,
well, not only just that, but there was like a 2-week window. So like if you were 85 and you had cancer and then you caught COVID, and within 2 weeks of you dying, they listed COVID as the cause of death. Even though you were like
on your way out the door anyway.
Stage 4 cancer, you know what I mean? Or just whatever. Like I was saying, it doesn't matter necessarily cancer, but if you're just in really bad shape.
And then on top of everything, this is the part that you can't like. That what's funny to me is just that chart alone is arguable, right? But then you have to factor in, which to me is undeniable, but I understand to someone else, I'm crazy. But just like you're saying, like I still don't believe that all them. I still believe the numbers aren't right. You know what I mean? Did you see? I don't mean to cut you off, but did you see just what happened in Florida? Mm-mm.
So Florida, they were talking about all these cases that were spiking and the numbers. So like, let's say the CDC said there were 28,000 reports in Florida. Well, Florida representatives challenged them and said, no, these are off. So they were off, and the CDC changed it on their website. They were off by about 10,000 cases. So it's like,
yeah, and that's been going. And here's my thing. How are you off by 10,000 cases if it's not being done purposely? And
but the thing is, like, people will say like, oh, well, that's just conspiracy talk. No, the CDC changed it on their website.
Well, you know that they also
so you have to wonder how many states didn't challenge it.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Of course. And then another, just to add to things that are factual that have been done, is with the vaccine, they have like the CDC list like deaths from vaccine problems, and apparently they have on there like 6,000 right now, but at one point it was 12,000, and then they did something and they made it 6,000. So like, what I'm saying is they're clearly fucking around with numbers. And then in Rogan's podcast with Zuby, they also talked about, when he says about how many unvaxxed are dying. Did you hear that part of the podcast?
I think so.
Well, basically, when they're saying like the more, like they'll say a lot of unvaxxed are died, and then they give you the number of how many unvaxxed died. That number is everyone that died from the beginning of the pandemic And there was a long time period where we didn't have a vaccine. So in other words, it's not like the people that died starting last week since we've been telling you need to get vaxxed. It's all the people that died from
the
that,
jump,
yeah,
from the start,
that
right.
weren't vaccinated.
Right.
And that's another thing, like you're saying, it's a numbers game,
right,
to them. And
well, we talked about it before. It's really easy to be like, if you have one case one week, and then you have 2 cases next week, and then CNN posts, "Oh, cases are up 50% in Delaware County." Well,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like it's you're just altering data.
Yeah,
like it's they're correct,
but they're altering data.
But it sounds a lot worse to like the average person. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and another thing I noticed, which is a new thing that I've noticed, is have you not like this is where I think it's so funny. So when I was going to Austin, my mom was real concerned because she's like, Dan, I started paying attention to this because it was freaking me out. They were like, they only have 6 ICU beds left. And I'm thinking, how come that they're not doing this in any other state? So in other words, think about how they're just playing with numbers again, right? Like they can't tell you the cases because maybe the number's not so great. So they started saying the Texas needs to do something. There's only 37 ICU beds left and people are waiting for beds and right?
Well, that's one thing that Zuby and Joe Rogan did talk about. All they're doing is saying cases are rising. They're not saying deaths are rising. They're specifically saying cases.
Well, no. And yes, you're correct. But I've never heard anybody start to do it by beds without mentioning cases. Yeah. And so all of a sudden I noticed this attack and this, like my mom doesn't know anything. It ain't like she started researching Austin. She started seeing this thing that then I started seeing was like, all of a sudden there was like the president or somebody was saying that these governors need to get it together right now. Texas Governor Abbott isn't doing his job because they're about to be a real crisis because of these beds. It was all about only having, like, they started tallying the number of beds left in the state, and they were giving you that number like every other day. Like now it's 17 beds left, and I'm like, so think about. I knew that there was something to it, you know. So then I started like seeing other people's points of view or whatever, and what people started saying was, just like I had said about COVID before, when they were like, we're at 100% occupancy. Well, if you have an emergency room where because it's COVID, you can't fill it. So you used to have 100 beds, but now you can only use 33 of them and 31 of them are being used, but it's all really about social distancing. Now you're at 97% occupancy, but you're not, because you're only using 25% of your fucking hospital. You know what I mean? Right. Well, I kept thinking, so what they said is it's the same thing with the beds. Like basically they only allowed a certain percentage of beds to be used. And so therefore they were given the impression that they were at this full occupancy. But then the governor finally responded and he said, all of my beds are being taken up because you're dropping fucking illegals off that are coming in, that like all of the beds were illegal immigrants from the border. Yeah. Like he wasn't saying like, it wasn't another fight back. It's like, you asked me to take these people into the hospital and I did. And now you're shouting that like, I'm not taking care of people. People are fine, but you're loading me up with people that are coming in at the border and have COVID, and you're asking me to take them in, and I am. And so I have room at the hospital to take them. It ain't like people are dying because they're there. However, the people that are there are illegal immigrants from the border that I'm housing, you know?
Yeah.
Crazy,
well,
bro.
And like I was saying, how they were mentioning today on that one podcast, on the Rogan podcast, about how they're just saying cases are rising. But we expect that to happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, of course, it's not a matter of, when or whatever. Eventually we're going to get COVID. But I feel like I'm fucking stuttering my ass off because I just drank a fucking glass of peanut butter whiskey and I'm like, holy shit, that just kicked my ass. One glass. But anyway, cases are one thing. People are going to get sick, but are we dying? That's what we need to be concerned about. You know what I'm saying? Like, so that's what they were mentioning on Rogan. Like, yeah, cases are going up, but that's naturally going to happen, you know, because this isn't going to go away. This is here to stay.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I was thinking about today, and, you know, how a lot of things that we've been talking about. Somebody posted something, and they were talking about Philadelphia and how, you know, numbers were looking good for Philadelphia as far as like schools reopening, businesses reopening, unemployment going up, and all these, you know, different statistics. And then it was like at the very end of this article, it was saying, you know, but we still have to be cautious because of the unvaccinated still, you know, putting us all at risk. And I was so fucking angry because I'm like, dude, this is so like, if all the scientists came out, doctors, scientists, and everybody was in agreement that, listen, if everybody takes this vaccine, COVID will go away, then I'd be like, okay, then you know what, you got me. But nobody's saying that. The only reason you take the vaccine is to lower the risk of severe complications from it and hospitalization.
Yeah.
That's it. People that have the vaccine are still spreading it. Even statistically, if it's low, I get it, but it's not going to end it. So like, we have to deal with the fact that this is just something that we're going to have to live with.
Well, are you ready for just in a nutshell, somebody's conspiracy theory that I believe about why they're doing that, why they want everybody to be vaxxed? And it's not a crazy conspiracy. It's not long, but it makes so much sense to me that I think it may be true. They don't want an A and B situation. So in other words, if everybody gets vaccinated, now also remember, I'm admitting that like, this isn't even so, I believe it could be true, but it's one of the things that I think, you know, that somebody mentioned that makes sense to me. If everybody gets vaccinated, and then people have things like heart attacks or whatever, it's like, well, you can't blame everything on, like, you can't blame it on the vaccine. If everybody's vaccinated, like already right now, there's people that are getting vaccinated, dying 2 weeks later. And people are like, well, yeah, I mean, it's just a heart attack. That like, how could you say one, you know, if nobody's looking into it and people are like, well, that's what happened. There's no A, B thing. So if everybody doesn't get vaccinated, then 5 years from now, you'll know, like, isn't it weird that like the heart attacks in people that were vaccinated are up X, Y, and Z? You know what I'm trying to say? Like, if everybody gets vaccinated, then we would just say heart attacks are up, and conspiracy theorists would be like, it's because of the vaccine. But if 40% of the population doesn't get vaccinated and 40% of the population seems to have less of these crazy things happen to them medically, somebody could always compare the two. And therefore, this isn't a thing to say like they're trying to kill us, but it's more of a thing to say that pharmaceutical companies want to cover their ass because it would have them less likely to be in trouble, say lawsuit wise and shit in the future, if it's harder to prove that it was actually because of the vaccine itself. So therefore, if we all take the vaccine, what we would call adverse effects of the vaccine could also just be like someone could say, well, Danny wasn't the healthiest guy and he had a heart attack, so be it. But if Danny doesn't get the vaccine and people that are of Danny's age and of his, you know, health bracket and whatever seem to have all of a sudden an increased amount of this, that, and the other thing, and then you can compare it to B, the B section of the world, then you could prove that there's one factor that's different in the people of this age group and of this health group, and that would be the vaccine. But if everybody takes it, it eliminates you being able to compare anything to anything. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. I mean, here's my thing. Afghanistan.
Jesus.
That's basically when you take a look at the war that we've been in Afghanistan for 20 years, right? We saw the optics of how bad that looked. And I'm not a Biden guy, but I will give him credit. He made a decision and he stood by it. Against all of his advisors and people telling him this is not good, he did it. And I think most people would agree that we shouldn't be there anymore. Right?
Yeah, but I think
No.
Well, yes, we shouldn't be there.
So that's it. Now, he obviously, it was sloppy. It was mishandled. Everything that went wrong is on him. You know what I mean? Like, I absolutely believe that everything that happened could have been handled better. But where I give him credit is the fact that he stood by his guns despite the backlash. He stood by his guns, and what he said in his little speech, I didn't hear it, but he did say it's unstable. It's not worth losing another American life over, which I agree with. But here's the problem. We've known we've been there for 20 years. So we've known for years that this is unstable. Trump knew, Bush kind of knew a little bit. Obama knew for 8 years, but they didn't withdraw for multiple reasons. For the same reason that we just witnessed, they knew what happened on their watch. So it's going to look bad on them, whoever's the president at the time. So again, they were just manipulating and telling you different reasons as to why we were there and blah, 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 blah. So the government isn't going to come out and say, well, Biden isn't going to get up there and be like, well, you know what? We misread this situation and we never should have been there. And we just missed it. We dropped the ball on it. It's the same thing with COVID. They're not going to come out and tell you, hey, you know what? We were wrong. Because why? Because it's going to the American people are going to not believe you even more. So they have to make everything simple. They got to come out and be like, look, man, COVID's dangerous. It's spreading. We got variants. You just got to take the shot. That's it. We're not talking about stop eating donuts, go run a little bit, maybe you should lose a little bit of weight. Maybe you should take a little vitamin D. We're not talking about anything else.
Yeah.
We have to make it simple for people to buy it because it's like this podcast. We go off on a rants and it gets complicated. Sometimes we kind of lose track of things. The government has to keep things simple for people to feel comfortable. And that's it. Like we have since the beginning of COVID till now, 2 major events, between the fall of Afghanistan and COVID. Nobody's admitting that they're wrong or that they fucked up or that it was a complete disaster. Even with Iraq, like when we invaded Iraq and got Saddam Hussein over because they had weapons of mass destruction, they were never found. They didn't spin it and be like, hey, you know what? We fucked that up. They just said, well, we got Saddam Hussein.
Yeah.
Even though you got Saddam Hussein because of weapons of mass destruction that you didn't find. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm saying. Like,
I want to ask you a question though. It's not, I just want to make sure because I feel like there may be some stuff either you like, in other words, the problem, just if you want to have the conversation. So the whole thing that I think is kind of weird and when you were saying like what Biden came out and he owned it in a sense of saying like, we shouldn't be there, period. You do realize that this is where I think is funny. The argument of whether we should be there or not wasn't in the air, and Trump was getting out of there and had a plan to get out of there. And the whole plan that he had to get out of there was continued, but stopped. So right now there's a lot of like, if that's why you're seeing people on CNN and shit kind of mad about this, because they're talking to these military intelligence people who are like basically there was never a debate on whether we shouldn't be there. And Trump was the one that said, we're getting the fuck out of there. And he took it down from 40,000 troops to 20,000, then down to the last 2,500, which there was no problems with. It was Biden apparently wanted to move the thing up towards September 11th to make this big show of it. And everybody said, don't. So what I'm getting at is, I'm sorry, but I don't give, like, basically Biden said to us a month ago when we were like, will there be a problem? And he was like, absolutely not. And yada, yada. And now people are making it about like, well, we shouldn't be there. And he did the right thing. We knew we shouldn't be there. We were on our way of getting out of there, but the getting out of there and leaving all that equipment and all was never what we were supposed to be doing. And we still could have done it.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm talking about.
Well, no, but
I understand. And that's what I'm saying. The whole process of what he went about it, I don't agree with. And I think it could have been absolutely handled much better. I'm saying everybody was telling him no, and he stuck to his guns and he did it. The process was a mess. It's a disaster. Trump ran with that to win president. Like, I'm going to end this war. And he didn't. Now, he was in the process of it, and I'm sure if he would have got reelected, it would have taken place. But in the 4 years,
but Trump just said he should have got out. No, but like, this is what I mean. This is where I'm saying there may be, like, I don't think this is too debatable, but it's fine. I mean, I'm not trying to argue on it, but when in other words, he went in and basically we were out, and the end game that he had set up was May 31st to be out. And yes. Biden pushed it back.
Right.
For optics, not because it was like, this is what I'm trying to say. Biden fucked everything that Trump had put in place up. And then and Biden was telling us last month when people were like, that just even moving it up made people have time to prepare. Plus they saw Biden was weak. Plus what Biden did was he gave up the airfield that we had, like a month ago that in Trump's plan, that motherfucker was the last to go because it was the last stronghold. But if by Trump's plan, we would have got all our equipment. Like, in other words, what you're seeing right now
you're missing
is a fiasco that could have been avoided. But it wouldn't have been avoided by prolonging anything. It would have been avoided by just sticking to the plan that Trump put in place and getting the fuck out of there 3 months ago.
Well, and here's also the thing. If Trump was in office, it would have been a much smoother process based off of, I think, his policy and the fact that he was already planning on it. There was a transition of power. You have a whole new team. You have whole new advisors and all that stuff. So I understand how pushing it back till now, I understand how that happens because, look, you take over in January, you got a whole lot of other stuff you got to worry about. I mean, I get it. What I'm saying is I give him credit for sticking to his word and not saying, oh, I'm going to push it back, or because from everything you're hearing is that the advisors were saying, no, we should stay there.
Well, no, they weren't saying, this is what I mean. Biden said a month ago, when people were like, but isn't there going to be problems? And basically Biden was like, nah, we're good. We're good.
Dude, you're not hearing me. You're stuck on Trump and his plans.
No.
And the fact, I totally agree that he fucked everything up and that he lied. I saw the video of him saying a month ago, no, it'll be easy. There won't be people it won't be like Saigon. There won't be people airlifted off of the rooftops. I get that. That's not what I'm saying. He was a president that said, I'm getting them out, and he got them out. Regardless of the aftermath, he did do it. That's all I'm giving him credit for.
Well, you said that he owned it. You said that he owned it, and he said, I got out of there, we shouldn't be in there, and then blamed it on Trump for the next 10 minutes of that speech and blamed the Afghan people and shit.
Well, of course. But what I'm saying is,
own it and say, I fucked up.
You're still missing the point because you don't want to give him credit. I'm just giving him credit due that he stuck by his word, because he could have changed it up. He could have changed it up and said, no, you know what? We need to stay there. Don't Trump. You can't listen to him. It's a disaster. We could have stayed there. He ran on it. He said he was going to do it. He did it. it's a disaster. He completely fucked it up. Again, I keep saying that, but he did it. And that's what I'm saying. That's the difference between him and Trump. Like Trump did run on that, and he had 4 years to do it, and he didn't. He did run on it. He didn't do it. You gotta give the dude some criticism. It's not like he doesn't have any faults to his campaign. He did say, I'm going to remove him. It didn't happen. He could say, in retrospect, Trump could say, well, I was planning on, my next election. If I won, that's how I was going to do it. But you can't determine if you're going to win a second term.
But also put it this way. And I'm not, dude, like, this is what I mean. You're getting stuck. What my thing is, I'm not trying to defend Trump. What I'm trying to say is, like, basically, if Trump was to do what you're saying, Trump had to follow the process, and he dwindled the forces down from 40,000 to 2,500. And the reason why he could not just remove them was because he still had to take, dude, what people are forgetting is there's like 40,000 American fucking citizens that are now fucking going to die, basically. And all of our equipment is there. And so basically, like, Trump's plan to pull out was basically all set in place. And Trump's deadline was always May 31st. But if Trump wanted to do something like Biden did, then he would have just pulled them all out before he got out to take credit for it. The whole thing. Yes. So what I'm saying is Biden basically fucked up. And then instead of coming out and saying, I would give Biden credit if he came out and said, I thought it was going to be different. It wasn't, but at least we're out of there.
Yeah, but
he came out and said, I never wanted to be there. We're not nation builders. But Trump, and this is what Trump left us. But
Trump blamed Obama for things that he left over. I have to deal with all this from the last. That's what they do. But every single president does the same thing.
Okay. So yeah, you're correct. But let me ask you a question. This is one of the biggest blunders in history of what Biden just did.
You're absolutely right.
People blame shit on other people, but like you have to. You can't blame this on somebody else.
I'm not.
And wait. And remember that we're having this conversation because you said I give it to Biden for taking credit for it. And now we're talking about how it's okay that he blamed it on Trump. That was my only thing is Biden has not taken fucking responsibility for this.
Yes, but every president does that. That's what I'm saying. Every president does. Obama did it from Bush.
No, and understandable. But wait, so that's fine. I'll agree with that.
That's political.
Okay, so I'll agree with that. But then how are we arguing about you saying, I'll give it to Biden? He said, this is what I set out to do, and this is what I did, and took responsibility for it.
No,
if he blamed someone else.
I said he did what he said he was going to do. That's it.
I
didn't say he was going to. He ran on the fact I'm going to end that war, and he did it. But I said he fucked everything up. Like, it looks horrible, but that's also part of the reason. You have to understand, every president knew that this was going to be bad. Every president knew that this was going to collapse. This wasn't going to be sustainable. So I absolutely agree. Like, Obama ran on, I'm going to get the troops out of there. And he never did it. Because I'm sure that he knew this is not stable. Like, this is going to be fucked up. And I don't want that on my watch. I don't want that to tarnish my legacy. So that's what I'm saying, because they've all run on that.
But to say Trump didn't do it, he did it. You just can't pull the plug on it.
No, he left a plan in place for the next president.
But what I'm saying is he was in the process. You can't quicken up the process just to do it while you're the president.
Yes,
but he took it down from 40,000 troops.
Bender.
So by the time
he left the plan for the next president.
Yeah, but he left 25,000 troops. That's it.
Doesn't matter. It wasn't done on his watch. It doesn't look bad on him. It looks bad on Biden.
He would have been the president if he would have been elected.
If he would have been elected.
But to say that Trump should have done it faster or something, but he didn't want to
But that's what he runs.
Is a really big.
But that was one of his campaign promises that I'm going to end
the war. But he couldn't pull the plug on it the next day. It was a process that was always set up to be
Listen. I'm not going to sit here and say, look, if you run on something, do it. because I understand, like, you're the president of the United States. You got a lot of shit you got to worry about. There's a lot, and I don't think it's not an overnight process. It's a gradual process. But if you run on a campaign like Obama did too, and he had 8 years and he didn't do it. If you have a plan and you run on that campaign, you said, I'm going to end that war. You can't then say, well, I have a plan in place after my 4 years that will go into the next election.
Tom, I'm sorry, but
the next one.
I'm getting stuck on this because let me ask you a question.
He didn't do it.
Biden, but he didn't do.
Trump has no responsibility for this at all. This didn't happen on his watch. All that was laid at Biden's feet was a date to end it, and then he pushed it back. That's it.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is to take the forces down from we were doing active operations and everything there, and Trump did what he had to do to slowly end that and was ending it, and it was basically over. And for a past year and a half, there hasn't been a death over there.
Well, you know why that's the case.
Why?
Because they had a treaty and plan. They had a treaty placed and planned. So the Taliban knew we're not going to fuck around because they're leaving in a year and a half. Because if they did fuck around, then those plans change. According to Trump's plans, there were contingencies. So I don't know exactly what those contingencies are, but if there's like an American death, maybe if there's an attack on American soldiers, then maybe that plan and that date changes. So of course, if you know your occupier is going to leave in a year and a half, you're going to play good boy. It's no different from somebody that's in jail and you're like, dude, I can get out in a year and a half.
We'll end this on this. I think what I would like to be understood. The only reason why I'm even still having this argument it's not to say like Trump ended the war or whatever else. What I'm trying to say is this isn't just like, all right, Biden moved the date, but he pulled the plug. Biden went in an order that doesn't make any sense, and he pulled the military out before the fucking citizens, whereas Trump's contingency plan was shit like, if you fucking start even like fucking coordinating around the outside of the fucking airport, we're going to bomb the shit out of you. And basically Trump's plan involved getting the equipment, getting everything. And the very last people to leave were going to be the military.
But not all that equipment was scheduled to leave. They were leaving that equipment for the Afghan fighters as well. I don't know what percentage. I don't know if it was all. But there was some artillery, artillery. But I'm not even
worried about the equipment. Basically, one of the dumbest things was there's an air base or something that's close to that airport. That was in Trump's plan. That was the last stand, because it was the last airfield that we had full control of. Right. Biden gave up control of the airfield first, and everybody was like, whoa, what are you doing? They weren't saying, no, don't pull out. People weren't telling him to pull out later or earlier. People were against him moving the date further. So this is the part that's fucked up. Biden thought that everything was great because of what Trump laid into place. And Biden thought, and everybody, this is not debatable. Biden moved it up.
You can't say that. You don't know.
Can't say what?
You can't say Biden thought everything Trump did was great and I'm going to move it up. You don't really know what's going on in the White House. You can't say that.
Tom, these are people on CNN saying we've told Biden not to give up that air base, but the only reason why he did it was because he didn't think there was going to be a problem, which, by the way, I didn't make that up. Biden sat down and said a month ago that there wasn't going to be a problem. And the only way that I'm assuming anything is because there wasn't a problem. But yet the only reason why there wasn't a problem was because Trump had contingencies on everything that he did and also had a different order of the way shit was going to go. But what people, and not people just on the right, people on CNN are saying is that Biden moved that date and gave people more time to plan. But the only reason why he moved that date was because he imagined this big ceremony where he was going to be fucking handing the country back over to the Afghanistans on September 11th. He moved that up for political optics. And he was saying a month ago when people were like, what are you doing? And he's like, there won't be any issues, blah, blah, because his whatever intelligence he had around him, with whoever was informing him, were people that were basing it off of the fact that, hey man, there hasn't been any problems a year and a half. This is all smooth. Why don't we just go ahead and make a big ceremonial thing out of it? And that's why we're sitting where we are, from what other people that are on CNN, that are military officials, that's the conclusion that they've come to. And so my whole thing is, forget who the fuck got out of there or whatever else or blah, blah, blah. But the thing that is really fucked up is there's some really fucked up shit going on.
Yes,
that could have been that could have been completely avoided if he got out of there in May. Like what we're looking at is just a really bad exit plan.
There's really no way to tell how things would have went if it would have been in May, if it would have been Trump, if it would have been Obama. There's no way to really tell, because they did anticipate that the Afghan army that has been trained over the past 20 years were going to fight. The president of Afghanistan fled. So like there were other factors at play that they can't really account for.
Well, I feel like you need to watch the fucking.
I've listened.
Trump's contingency plan was if 5% of that country was in the Taliban's hands, that they would not leave. And so all the Taliban wanted them to do was leave. By the time Biden left, when he made his decision, 65% of the country was in the hands of the Taliban, which Trump never gave up any percentage to the Taliban. Now, going with what you're saying, they probably would have pulled out. They probably would have pulled out. The whole country would have got taken over again. But the whole concern is not about the president leaving, the fighters not fighting. The whole concern was, if it's going to be fucking chaos when we get out of there, we don't want our people or the people that helped us being trapped. So that was the whole point of the exit plan. But we knew we were going to give the country up.
You're acting like Trump's contingency plan was going to be fail-proof. Because let's say he gets back and he's reelected and he gives them all these contingencies. Maybe it goes smoothly. I would imagine, I would hope. And just based off of his demeanor, and I do believe he would have been a lot tougher on them. But there's no way to exactly tell that Kabul wouldn't have fell in a day or two after he withdrew the troops. There's no way to tell, because they've all said this. There were multiple people that were saying we expected it to fail, but not this quickly.
Look, we need to end this argument and just agree to disagree.
But you can't say that I know it would be different under Trump, because you can't prove that.
What we're disagreeing on is the reason why there's a big fiasco is because Biden pulled military out before the people that are now stuck there. In Trump's plan, the military was going to still be there and get the people out. And then once the people were out, then if we ended up with a fiasco right now and it wasn't American citizens, people wouldn't be mad. Or if it wasn't. So what I'm saying is, this is where I mean, where we're getting lost. I'm not saying if Trump would have pulled out, it'd been perfect and that country would be amazing. What I'm saying is, we all know that this thing would end up falling apart. The problem is that knowing that it's going to fall apart, you need to make sure that you can get what you need to get out of there. Maybe it's not equipment, but it's definitely the people, the poor people that are fucking stuck there now. And so for some weird fucking reason, Biden went in a different order and started doing shit that, like, people weren't saying, no, don't get out of there. People were saying, don't take this military base out first. This doesn't make any sense.
No, there were absolutely people that did not want to leave Afghanistan.
There were people that always didn't want to leave Afghanistan. But right now, the argument, this is where people are getting confused. And this isn't about Trump, whatever. This one thing, and then we can end it. The argument is not about whether we should or shouldn't be in Afghanistan. So for anybody to say, well, he did the right thing, he did the wrong thing, whatever, about getting out of Afghanistan. Biden wanted to get out of Afghanistan. Trump wanted to get out of Afghanistan. The argument and the real debate is not about getting out of Afghanistan and now look what happened. The debate is, what the fuck did you do it like that for? That's it. That's the only debate.
Yeah,
And
but
people are using the debate of, well, Trump wanted to get out of there and blah, 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 blah. That's irrelevant. The bottom line is there are a lot, dude, our own fucking allies, we left them. They're mad at us because they don't even understand why we just did it the way we did it.
Yeah, but you do realize this from the moment we started talking about this. I said everything he did was wrong and sloppy. The only thing I agree with is that he stuck to his guns and got them out. That's it. Everything, the whole process, everything he did was sloppy and wrong.
He didn't get them out. He had to send 8,000 more troops there.
Bender, we're not there anymore. We're not. The war's over.
You realize, whoa. When did this happen?
As of right now, we're not there anymore.
Wait, as of when?
No, there's people still there, but
Tom, they sent 8,000. They had to send 8,000 troops back over there. We have 7,000 people over there right now. 7,000 military people there to try and get these people out.
Yes, because it's a disgrace because of the whole process, because he fucked up the process. But once that happens, it's not like it's going to be another year and they're going to be like, well, we're going to be or another 2 years. We're still technically fighting a war.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens.
Because again, well, and it could change. Of course it could change because it was sloppy, but he still did what he said he was going to do. And what George Bush, Obama, and Trump all said, I'm pulling the troops home, and none of them did. No, we're not ending it. And that's just said this whole time, I've been like, I don't agree with it. It's sloppy.
But he owned it.
I have I just can't believe that the smartest people, or at least they should be the smartest people running our military and whatever, they should have had a better plan on how to make this happen.
100% agreed. And
so I think it's completely a disgrace, but I also do absolutely believe
that we shouldn't be there.
Yes, that we shouldn't be there. And I also do believe that other presidents knew that this is going to be bad and it's going to look bad for me for re-election.
Yeah, but my argument with the Trump thing is just Trump is the only one of them that put everything in place that actually dwindled it down to the point where, you got to go out in a process, but it was basically the war in Iraq was the war in Afghanistan was basically over.
Yeah, but there were times under Obama where they were like, oh, we're bringing home 20,000 troops. And then all of a sudden it would ramp up and they'd be like, oh, well, we have to. So there were always.
No, 100%. There's a joke online, which I actually I seen this and I thought it was crazy because I realized that I thought this a million times. They show you how many times presidents announced what they just announced, which is we are now officially ending and pulling. Don't you remember there was a fucking under Obama? I remember there was this ceremony where it was the last troops coming out of fucking Afghanistan.
Yeah, and then there would be another reason for something to happen.
Well, did they go back in or did they just never really come back out? Because that's what I don't remember is anybody announcing we got to go back in. I just remember constant announcements of we are now officially out of there.
Well,
and then we weren't.
Here's also the thing that I think all of them kind of fucked up. We have troops all over the world, bases, troops all over the world. In Afghanistan, the idea was to just completely build that country up, install the president, build up their army. They could defend themselves, which realistically, I don't even know. And this is, again, going back to COVID and this, I don't really know what the plan is. And they don't really, their messaging on what the plan in Afghanistan always changed. Because some of them say, well, it was never about, regime building and country building. It was about helping, Afghan troops and whatever, the women in Afghanistan. It's all political bullshit that just to cover their asses. But realistically, I was listening to Tim Pool and he had a guy on and he was like, look, there's no reason at all for us to withdraw all of our troops there because we have troops all over the world. We should still have troops over in that country assisting with the Afghan army just in case, just to help. And he was like, listen, 20 years, as long as that is, for real change to take place, he's like, we should have been there for like 100 years to really change the culture for the women, for the Afghani people. It's going to take decades. It's not going to happen in 20 years. He's like, but the problem is the cost. The cost doesn't, it's not cost efficient anymore. You know what I mean? And that's part of the whole thing. Like the regime change in Iraq didn't work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It sounds great, but it doesn't work.
No, and like I think because I didn't really, I don't think anybody knows the answer, but like honestly, like what they were saying is like, which I kind of hope comes out of this in a sense, if this is really just like a fiasco and maybe we learned our lesson. So what somebody was saying the other day is like this whole nation building thing that we've been thinking we can do is like impossible, that we think we can do to other countries, period. And like somebody was saying like, we should have just went over there, bombed the fucking shit out of them and left a fucking note on the fridge that said, dude, don't do this again.
Right.
And just fucking rolled back out.
Absolutely. Once they got Osama bin Laden, that's it. We're out. We're done.
How long was that a couple years? Were we in there for a while? Like when did we get Osama? Like a couple of years or like right away?
No, because at one point we had more troops in Iraq than Afghanistan.
Okay.
And there was this confusion again with the American people because it was like, why do we have more people in Iraq? You know what I mean? For Saddam Hussein when it was Osama bin Laden for 9/11. So like there was always this confusion. And then of course Iraq toppled and they got him. And it wasn't until after they didn't catch bin Laden until after Saddam Hussein.
Dude, what I really
it was always confusing. Like they didn't have a whole lot of troops. And on top of that, Pakistan, which is technically one of our allies,
was hiding his ass.
Was high and there's a lot of terror cells that are in those surrounding areas.
Yeah.
So like, we're in these kind of deals for oil and just I guess to keep peace among, countries, whatever. But they're all kind of doing their little thing because culturally they might come over to the White House in Washington and shake hands and take photo ops, but culturally we are completely different. Like it's just not going to work.
Well, I think the sad part is like, I can't like know this, but I've seen little things that I've read, and even still, none of us know it. But what I'm putting together with like when you were talking about like the president just left and shit. The sad part is, and Trump was saying this on fucking Hannity the other day, where he's like, there was no army there. Basically, we were paying those soldiers. All the Iraqi soldiers were being paid more than any soldier in like the world. We were just shoveling money at these people to be in the army or whatever. And basically, it was like, if you really think about it, what it must have been over there for the past 20 years is just a big fucking sham of just shoveling, like whether it was our people involved or just the Afghanistan people. It was like, oh, you want me to kind of just fucking like be part of this military that we never fight on our own. We never fucking really do anything. We're like interpreters or whatever. But they were just shoveling money at these people. And then the minute you leave, because what they're saying is the president left on a plane, but with like stacks of cash. Like it's just been like, that's like, I guess the way I see it is kind of like, I've always thought like, oh yeah, we're over there. There's people that are like fucking, they're now becoming like emboldened because they got America behind them and they're making their own army and shit. And it's like, if you were on the ground over there, you probably knew like these people ain't in the army. They're just signing up because they're finding out they can get a fucking paycheck and we're just giving them money and they're fucking, it was probably it's starting to feel to me anyway, like it was just a big sham for 20 fucking years, which is crazy.
It is. And that's kind of the thing when I talk about culture. Like if you're an Afghan citizen who isn't part of the Taliban, you've been ruled by under like Al-Qaeda and the Taliban and all these different like terrorist cells. So you don't really know what freedom is. And then you have Americans that are kind of like, all right, we're going to come under here and establish democracy, and your women can go to school and they don't have to wear the hijabs and, you know, blah, 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 blah. So if all of a sudden they're like, it's kind of like your parent, it's kind of like leaving home for the first time. Like if your parent, if you're a parent and you take care of your kids and you give them everything and you do everything, and then all of a sudden you're gone, how the fuck are they going to survive?
Well,
like they've depended on you for everything.
But you're even making me wonder, like, when we're like, oh, and then we give them freedom or whatever. But like, I guess the thing I'm even thinking about with like the paycheck is like, when you just said they're under this rule and that rule, like they just ended up being under another rule. And you know what I mean? Like in other words, like, oh, then your kids can go to school. Like, we don't even know what they believe. Like, I bet you any amount of money, there might have been guys that are like, these girls shouldn't go to school, but they're just like, well, we got to do, like, the Americans are here now. And the difference between them and fucking anybody else that was here was like, they pay us well to come here and do jumping jacks.
They're not getting slaughtered for having, like, right now if they have a Bible, because some of them there still are Christians over there. You know what I mean? Like,
well, yeah, I get. I agree with.
And the women are being turned into sex slaves already. They've already, ironically, one of the first things the Taliban did was to go to every civilian to start handing over their guns. Which surprisingly, you know, Australians turned in their guns years ago. That's all they ever fucking try to do over here is turn in your fucking guns. And it's like, now you have an unarmed population that can't defend themselves.
Yeah. But, well, I guess what I meant though is like, just in a deeper thought, we don't know if some of those guys, like, in other words, like you said, like, they've been ruled and ruled and ruled. So it's like, we come and we say like, oh no, like you said, like, we're not slaughtering them, right? But for all you know, there might have been a few guys there that are like, why are these bitches going to school? You should be cutting their fucking heads off for trying to read. Oh, you know what I'm trying to say? Like,
dude, the weirdest thing about freedom is in the podcast that Rogan had with that woman that came from North Korea.
Yeah.
When she defected and she came over to America, like, she was like, I was so afraid of freedom and making my own decisions. I didn't know how to react. If I could eat back home in North Korea, like, I would have went back, because like, I don't know how to handle freedom and doing everything on my own, because they rule everything from what you watch, the way you dress, to how you eat, to how you pray, who you pray to, everything. And that's something that, again, that we've talked about, that Americans here, they have no concept of it, because they're completely free. So they don't have things to really complain about, which is why we complain about fucking pronouns and like dumb shit.
Yeah. Like I'm sure you've heard this said, but I've seen so many people post this or tweet this or something similar to this. And they're like, for those of you over here that think this country is so bad, take a look at these motherfuckers trying to hang on to the fucking side of a fucking plane. Like, risk, like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's so bad over here. Yet some guy is like, I will try and hang on to the bottom of this fucking wheel.
Yeah, like, and that's what I'm saying. Like, imagine being a child at 18 that your parents have literally done everything for you. And then all of a sudden, like, yeah, like, they can tell you, like, look, you got to grow up. Eventually you're going to be on your own. But if they literally have paid everything for you, you're not working, you're not doing anything, and they turn to you for advice, all this stuff, and then they just roll out by the time your 18th birthday comes around.
Yeah.
You're going to be fucked. Like, you're going to be like, what the fuck do I do now?
Well, dude, and Glenn Beck was saying something different take on it, but, you know, and he was like, just imagine, like, people, we've been there for 20 years. There are some people that only understand the American, I guess, occupation or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. And so now imagine, like, instantaneously this Taliban fucking 16th century mindset is now about to be your life.
Yeah. And now you're under Sharia law.
Yeah.
Like,
And dude, I don't know if you've heard this, but did you hear about the biometric database thing? Which is not like, it sounds crazy when I say it like that, but like it's CNN's talked about it, Bongino's talked about it. Like it's been talked about enough that it's not just somebody saying it. So the scariest part is that they have apparently at like they have our biometric database or some shit, which is basically like a computer that has like a fingerprint scan on it, a retina scan on it, right? So what, you know how you keep hearing that they're saying they're going door to door, but you think in your head they're going door to door and they're trying to like interrogate everybody or whatever. No, they're going door to door and they're making you put your finger on this thing. And it's basically our database. And you put your finger on that and it's going to say whether you worked with the fucking Americans or not. Like it's something that these people should not have. And I've heard this biometric database be brought up by a couple different like news outlets or other people talking about it. And in one case, they were saying, you see like how people are like, they got Black Hawk helicopters and Humvees, but they don't know how to use them or whatever. Mm-hmm. Well, they're going door to door because that biometric database that they have is going to tell you who knows how to fly a Black Hawk helicopter, who knows how to use this equipment, who knows how to fly a drone, who knows how to whatever. So they're just going around and looking for certain individuals, as well as just like the individuals that don't really matter, that they're just going to, you know, behead or whatever. But like you said, like I think like we're all in an understanding now is just like either way you look at it, it's like, what the fuck were we doing there for 20 years? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, what the fuck was the purpose? And now it's going to be worse.
Well, yeah. And what's really fucked up is, and again, like I said, I really don't like his approach was fucked up. I really, really think that there was a better way that we could have went about this, the withdrawal. With that being said, I can't imagine what it must be like that if you served in Afghanistan and worked, you know, you worked with some of the people, the Afghani rebels, and then all of a sudden to see them falling from planes that are trying, you know, when your planes leave, like,
yeah.
And you know, Biden, obviously, and deservedly so, is getting a lot of criticism for this. And just, it's not just Biden, though. There's a lot of people behind the scenes that are involved in these decisions as well. There's a lot of people that were behind the scenes with Trump, behind the scenes with Obama, that, you know, were giving bad advice, that were just kind of like a perpetual state of war. And there was like, what was the end game? Like, what was the point of it?
Well, one little point
and that's the thing. I don't think they even knew. Like, I think once they kind of caught bin Laden, like I thought, this is what I think. I think because after 9/11, the whole Middle East is viewed as a threat. So because of that, if you're in the United States and you just had 9/11, what are you going to do? Like, you have to defend yourselves from that happening again, right? So in a way, I understand, like, okay, let's go over there. Let's try and build armies. Let's try and build, you know, allies and coalitions with people that aren't part of the Taliban. Get them on our side. Let's help them out. And then eventually we'll leave and they'll be thankful to us. They'll praise us. But I think the same way Russia failed in Afghanistan, I think a lot of times world powers, like, your ego gets a little, like, we're the United States, like, we can fucking do whatever we want. We'll make shit work. I think we underestimate the resilience of the Taliban and Al Qaeda and all that. And funny, somebody just posted something that I saw. Remember in Rambo 3, when he went over to help in Afghanistan to fight against the Russians, And there was like this speech where this guy was with Rambo on the fucking mountain, and he was like, "Oh, the snake always comes over here," basically saying all these countries come over here to kind of defeat us, and they always fail. And I'm like, yeah, how about that? That's a fucking crazy fucking message.
Well, dude, and here's where here's the what I'm starting to believe is actually going on over there, which I think is fucking weird, is you notice how like we have a beef with Russia, but we don't go to Russia, and Russia doesn't come to the US. China's got a beef with us, but we don't go to China. China doesn't come to us. Everything goes through. So what I actually think the fucking Middle East is this big little slush funny place where you get to fucking constantly exploit these fucking Middle Eastern fucking ancient fucking tribal places that aren't ever going to be to the level that we're at civilization wise. And it's like, it's your little fighting ground and slush fund ground. So in other words, we don't want to fight Russia, but when Russia's in Afghanistan, we go over there, whatever. And I kind of feel like basically there's people that don't want to let go of that. So I agree that like there's bad information being given. My thing with the Biden shit is that I really think that like either way, he ain't making decisions anyway. Even his decision to come out and speak was fucking laid out for him in a sense. But that's not an attack on him. What I'm just saying is I think that there are a lot of people that run our country, whether it be Trump, whether it be Biden, whether it be whatever, and they don't want to let go of, you know, their little fucking game that they get to play in the Middle East, where it keeps all the military industrial complex using money. You know what I mean? Like just not being in Iraq anymore. Next year, when we're doing our military budget, we're going to say, well, we don't need to give that $50 billion to fund the Iraq thing anymore. And people don't want to let go of that, you know? And so, and then my other weird concern that I just wanted to add earlier of something somebody mentioned, and these are the reasons why I have a hard time like accepting what this administration was prepared for, is Jen Psaki was on vacation this week, and so was Biden. And somebody pointed out, they were like that these people went on vacation because they thought this was going to be whatever information they were given. They thought this was going to be some honky dory thing. And once it was done, they could be on vacation. And so my thing is just like to have it completely implode in your face and then come back and make a statement, like, as if like, you know, who cares? Like, you know, who, like, clearly you, again, it's one of them things too, where it's like, there's no empathy being given on the side of government, whether it be vax or COVID, you know what I mean? Like, and that's my thing is like, don't tell me you expected this chaos, 'cause you did. This is come back and say, look, we thought it would go better and it didn't. However, the bandage is off now, you know? And I think we're all happy that we're not over there, but sadly, I really kind of think that it's possible that he was given bad information and things were done in a certain way to now we're going to have a bigger problem over there, and we're never actually going to be out of there. You know, we'll be out of there in the sense of maybe we won't be over there trying to do nation building, but you know, like somebody said the other day, like now Iraq actually has one of the most well-equipped armies in the world, which is weird. You know what I mean? So we might, if I don't know what this is going to mean, but China's already recognized the Taliban as the leadership and is in talks of doing shit with them. I don't know, man. There's just a lot of things I don't like. And I actually think, because I do know that they've done shit where they didn't give Trump the right information and it was called out around before he left. Remember, there was some argument about like they weren't giving him the right number of troops. They were like lying to him, and that got uncovered. And like somebody probably lied to Biden because they really don't like. I think that the chaos that you're seeing right now is not really like, even though we were going to leave and maybe Taliban was going to take over, just maybe not in the way it happened. And I think the chaotic way it's happening could possibly have been purposefully done by somebody underneath Biden, but that was giving them the information, because the real goal was to never actually end the need for us to be doing shit over there, period. You know?
Yeah, well, and I think you make a great point. I think one, with the Middle East, there aren't a lot of like superpowers over there. You know what I mean? So like it's easy for us to kind of go over there, kind of flex our muscles, spend a little money on some new military equipment, blah, 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 go over there and just kind of,
try out our drones. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Which is fucked up. But the reason why we're not doing that in Russia and China is because they got fucking nukes. You know what I mean? We're not doing it.
Yeah.
We're not doing it to fucking North Korea because they got fucking nukes. And to be honest, I mean, North Korea is probably a much more hostile environment in many ways than Afghanistan is. I mean, I don't really know. I can't really tell the difference. I have no idea to really compare the two. But they're just as bad. They're the dictator and they're living is just as bad, but we're not going to go over there because one, they got ties to China, and two, they have nuclear capabilities. So we're not going to fuck with them. And, at the end of the day, what really scares me is the fact that the thing about Trump was a loose cannon. And I think that everybody else knew that around the world. Like, you could say whatever you want about Trump. You don't like him because he said grab him by the pussy, blah, blah, whatever. Other alpha leaders know an alpha when they see it. They know that he wasn't bluffing. I'm sure that they thought he's a little bit crazy. They probably thought, oh, he's a little fucking, reality show host, whatever. But I guarantee you that there was definitely a part of them that were a little bit nervous. The same way that everybody was like, when he called fucking Kim Jong-un Rocket Man. And everybody was, oh, Jesus, now we're going to be in World War III. You know damn well that Kim Jong-un is not used to being talked to like that. And he was probably like, maybe we should.
Yeah.
He's not a career politician. So, like, they don't fucking know. They don't know years and years of his past, of how he was as a senator, as a mayor, and how hardline he was on crime and all these other things.
Yeah, that's a good point. They have no other thing to base him politically off of.
Yeah, they have no back. Yeah, it's like if you're
like zero
in a sports team, like somebody comes out and fucking throws up fucking 10 touchdowns on you that came off the bench. You got no tape on the guy.
Yeah.
You got nothing to watch. So like they got to be like, I don't fucking know. Like
no, or even worse, it's the first time you're ever playing this team and you've never seen any of the players do anything. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I guarantee you that they knew, like, all right, this dude might fuck some shit up if it escalates a little bit.
Well, I think the other thing too is, see, like, you're 100% right, but even calling the loose cannon part, what I actually think though is, like, basically North Korea knows we could demolish them. You know what I mean? Afghanistan knows we can demolish them, but they also have been playing this game with us that we respond to because in other words, you don't ever want to go head on with the big guy, but you constantly threaten them and you do
you poke them.
Yeah. And the thing was before Trump, we always were looking at every angle politically to handle it. And if you do that, this poking game's never going to stop. But also at the same time, the real fear is never going to, in other words, North Korea is not coming to get us either, but yet they're still building their missile, whatever else. And so when Trump was like, try me type of thing and called him Rocket Man, like, my thing was, people are like, oh my God. But at the same time, I don't think it matters. You know what I mean? Like I think Trump's outtake on it was like, I'm not playing poke the fucking bear games. And when he did that, they just stopped poking the bear because that's all it was anyway. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to say, like, if Trump didn't do that, we wouldn't be safe. No, I think we were safe either fucking way, honestly. You know what I mean? Like, I think we weren't going to war with North Korea, whether Trump would have been like, well, and so the whole thing is, why give him anything at all? But it's not a defense of Trump or anything. What I'm just saying is, one cool thing that I did like, if you follow most of the times that Trump did something crazy in a negotiation, and it wasn't always whatever you call it, diplomatic, whatever you call it when it's for foreign foreign diplomacy or whatever. But like, he would turn around and make some crazy statement like, I'm going to fucking kick every fucking overseas corporation out of America if they don't start fucking paying their fair share or something. And then all of a sudden, everybody, there'd be the talk for the week would be like, oh my God, Trump's crazy. He's going to just kick people out. He can't do it. And the whole talk would be like, how can he do this? And then, or when he was getting out of the trades, not to bore you, but when he was getting out of the trade deals with like Mexico and Canada, he was like, I'm going to do this, and all this crazy shit where people started talking about like, but how could we not do trade with Canada? Then he would go meet with them. And if you look at the deal that they struck, it was just slightly better than the one we had. And I think what Trump's idea of, and I bet you if you read his book, which I never read, Art of the Deal, I bet you it's right in there. He would say this crazy thing. And then the people he would go in to deal with would be like, this motherfucker's crazy if he thinks he's going to end all trade. And then he goes in and just asks for like 1 or 2% less in tax. And they're like, yeah, no problem. Ooh, we thought you were going to, you know what I mean? Rather than go into it and be negotiating for 10 hours over trying to get the tax bracket down 2% or something, they were just so happy to take whatever he fucking offered at that point. So to me, it was a good strategy, you know? And then I never incorporated into it what you said. Like, they also don't have years and years of him doing that to turn around and say, fuck you. You know, to turn around and fight back with him. They only know, like, we don't know. Is this guy really gonna cancel all trade with us?
Yeah. Well, and dude, I mean, look, you know, one other thing that makes me nervous is, you know, now we are viewed as weak. You know, China released a statement that basically said, like, when we invade Taiwan, the United States won't do anything. And so it wasn't if, it was when. So it's pretty much inevitable, and Taiwan is an ally.
They said when?
Yeah. So, and they also said, they told the United States to stop any kind of arms deals.
Yeah, yeah.
So all of that is kind of like unnerving. It's a little bit unsettling because now we're at a point, like, you just had Biden that was like, well, we're not going to risk any more American lives over this, which I agree with and I get. But like, we're putting more focus on, you know, domestic terrorism and all this other weird shit from January 6th and all this other, like, we're still talking about an insurrection when it literally just happened in front of our face.
Yeah.
Like, January 6th wasn't anything, not even anything comparable to what just took place.
Yeah.
Like, people are still afraid. So I you know, and look, a lot of Americans have gotten really soft. The way I was thinking about it, driving my fucking trash truck, and I just think about fucking weird shit all the time. It's kind of like another Sylvester Stallone reference. Rocky, when he was fucking down and out, he was fucking hungry when he beat the fucking champ.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? After that, and he got the money, he got the ads, he got soft. You know what I mean? There's a lot of Clubber Langs out there. There's a lot of fucking Dragos out there. They're still looking like they're hungry. They're fucking beasts out there. Like, we've gotten so comfortable in our way of life that I really believe that a lot of people just don't really think that it can go away. And it really can. And it's not that I think that, you know, Russia or China is going to invade us.
No,
I don't really know, but there is absolutely all of the dissension with race, with identity politics. I'm not saying that Russia and China are the major factors for that happening, because I don't believe that. I mean, obviously we have a history, that's why, but they absolutely play off of that and create things, dialogue online to cause, dissent amongst Americans. And Ronald Reagan said, he's like, the America's not going to fall overnight. It's gonna come in the form of liberalism. It's not going to just happen one night. I mean, it could, of course, 9/11 happened. It could, of course, there could be, God forbid, somebody drops a nuke on us, whatever. But there is going to be this slow deterioration of everything in American values because we've just gotten soft. Because it's like we're not fighting to eat. Sure, we got poor people. We have people that are in like really, really bad communities that, yes, they are fighting to eat. But as a whole, there's a lot of prosperity in America. There's a lot of people at the top. There's a lot of people in the middle that are just okay, that are thriving. They're getting by. They're getting their fucking TV dinners and their fucking Budweisers and their fucking, wrestling every fucking a couple nights a week. They can fucking watch whatever the fuck it is, whatever reality show, Netflix. So they just get complacent. A lot of us are fucking lazy. That's why we're the, the obese fucking country in the world. We're not taking care of our health. Like we're just soft. You know what I mean? Like we can't, even with the COVID situation, like we're absolutely panicking over people dying. And like, I'm not saying that's not sad and it's not tragic, but like people don't want to accept the fact, like we've never been immortal. We're not, like, it's going to happen.
Well, since we've been doing this podcast, there's been multiple things that my whole life I couldn't understand. We talk about how did the Jews end up becoming in the situation they were in. We talked about how does civil war come about? How do you end up, we talked about, how could you lose a civilization? Like, how could you not be America or a superpower? And like, just to talk about the superpower, like, how could you lose a superpower? And everything you just said, like something I never thought about, like we could just destroy it. You know what I mean? And so recently, how I told you about the one time we were talking on here and I told you, like, during the fall of Rome, one of the things that I remembered reading was like how we started the reason why one of the reasons why Rome fell was because they started to become like hype, like, I don't know what the right word for me, but they would be like, very interested in sexuality. And it was all about like
overly sexualized. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, another thing that I've also brought up on here that even when I said it, I said, I don't know what it means, but I'm letting you know that now I'm sorry. Remember that crazy conspiracy where I said somebody came on from Australia and said, what's going to happen is they're going to say it's going to be a climate crisis or a humanitarian crisis, and you're going to have to take these people in. And I'm thinking in my head, well, yeah, there's a crisis at the border, but what does that really mean? Right? Because I can't see that becoming the end of like whatever. Like, is that what they're talking about? Like NATO's going to step in and say, you got to take these people in and stuff. Well, now we're already talking about some other country. Like we're about to drop off 100,000 Afghani guys. Right. But regardless of this, I still don't really know how that means anything. Right. We can handle that. Well, I was reading another thing about how Rome fell. And and it goes in. The reason why I'm getting there is from everything you were saying. We've become lazy, right? We've become lazy. Well, what happened in Rome was that they got lazy, right? So basically, Rome was all over the place, and there was no real war at Rome's doorstep. It was just like if you wanted to have a soldier, you had to pay him a shit ton of money. So what they were doing was like taking over other countries and making that army be their army, because the actual Romans didn't want to do anything anymore. Right. You know what I mean? Well, it got to a point where Rome started to do what we're trying to implement. Rome started basically, like, Romans themselves started to be like rich people that thought that because they were everywhere all over the world that they didn't have to do things themselves. So they kind of went into like this universal income mode, and they didn't want to work. So they started letting other countries, other like the Vikings, or was it the barbarians? Mm-hmm. So basically they started looking at it like, we don't want, to do anything. So they opened their borders up completely for other people to work, which was like mainly barbarians and stuff. And so basically what happened was eventually Rome had no cultural identity of its own, and the country just destroyed itself. That's basically what I was reading. And I'm thinking in my head, like, I mean, if we're just sitting here, we think we can all be living in fucking virtual reality and sitting in our houses and working from home, and we don't really want to do any of the real shit. So we just let other countries come in here and we don't care. The next thing you turn around and like, you don't really have your own cultural identity. We're not out in the street going, yeah, we're American. We don't even like saying it. And then next thing you know, this whole fucking thing just dwindles away. And like that, to me, that's more of a possibility than I would have ever understood at any other time. Like, just think how like we live in a country where we think that we're as global people, we're global citizens, and we don't even fucking identify with our neighbors, and we can't agree on anything, and we don't stand for anything, and we don't want to do anything, and all we want is ice cream and Uber Eats and Netflix. I mean, that's a recipe for disaster.
Well, and it's kind of like how, I want to talk about the Mouse at the Palace, but just I'll make this last statement. Before we came over here, there were different tribes of Indians that were constantly at war. You know what I mean? Like, some of them were friendly, some of them were vicious, but there was constantly conflict amongst the people that lived on this land that we call America now. Now, all we've done, we've put a bunch of different tribes, white people, black people, Christians, Muslims, Asians, gay, straight, Catholics, Protestants. We have all of these different tribes, and we have all this opportunity to make money and build for yourself. You know what I mean? To create wealth and to have a house, blah, blah, blah. But the concept is still the same. Like, we're all tribal. We all kind of stick to our own. We're a lot nicer for the most part. We're not going around fucking killing each other. But you're still going to have shitty fucking people. We're still going to have people that just like, I don't fucking like that black guy. I don't like that fucking white guy. I don't like that gay guy. You're not going to eradicate that. It's in all of us. You know what I mean? Like, there's certain things just throughout humanity that it's proven that's kind of happened, especially right here on this land before we kind of inhabited it. But we're doing a pretty good job at it. Like, for the most part, like, this is just one big experiment. Well, we've done a pretty good job. And if you just tone down the rhetoric, like, if the people that are leading this country just kind of came up and be like, listen, guys, we're going to keep trying and working on providing jobs and keeping this thing moving. But you got it pretty good. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think take care of yourself. Take care of your neighborhood. Take care of your fucking neighbor that's next to you. Like, look after one another. Because, like, again, the government, like I said earlier, they want to simplify things. Like, everything is extremely complicated. So, like, your favorite fucking politician can't get up there and break down all this shit. Like, they're just going to go up and say, well, we need healthcare. Well, there's racism. Well, cops are fucking bad. But it's so much more complicated than that. Like, if it's not an easy fix that they can get up and fucking go on their spiel and tell you. And quite frankly, even if they were going to do that, most people don't want to look in the mirror and take responsibility for themselves.
100%. Like, but and one other thing though is like, first off though, they shouldn't be telling us that. They shouldn't be telling people that like half the country's bad though. Period. I don't care. Like
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like the rhetoric that is coming out of our politicians, like it's just tearing us apart. And the reason why that's happening is obviously for them to just ultimately stay in power. And they're the fucking puppet master, and we're just the puppet on the strings.
And just to add a little segment to what you're saying too, like when you were saying, people are going to not like each other, people are going to ever, and you know what though. When we're just in society, like when we're just like that stuff handles itself. Like, yeah, I'm sorry, but it really does. Like if as long as time,
yeah.
And so that's one thing I think these politicians are hurting people with is like, we always know that these things exist. And so if you're at work and you at your job, there's some good people and there's one asshole, or there's whatever. It's like, hopefully you rely on people around you to, if something's being done unjust, you're going to have somebody step in and say, hey man, fucking leave that dude alone. Or like, yeah, he said this or, whatever, but like, don't fucking, doesn't need to be, thrown out of a window for it or something. And the thing is I do feel that rather than just letting us handle that ourselves, like that's the scary part to me is they're interfering with that because they know that we handle that ourselves. And so now they're kind of causing more of a conversation to go on with yourself internally when you go to interject and handle that. Like, in other words, they're keeping people out of conversations that normally would be the voice of reason in them sometimes or whatever. But, regardless, yeah, I just do think that like a lot of these things that they're making these huge issues, like they really at least did used to handle themselves because we handle that. Like that's not their job. There's no way you're going to stop the fact that there's going to be an asshole or that there's going to be some dude who's a racist. But the way that dude learns is not from a politician telling somebody to fucking do something. He learns by his interactions not being accepted on a daily basis, or every once in a while a certain thing happens or whatever.
Yeah, and then when we talk about race, there's a lot of fucking people making a lot of fucking money off of it, off of selling it. Like it it's no different. Like Robin DiAngelo, right? She's the broad that wrote White Fragility. So it's one of the number one fucking selling authors. She's going around killing it in private speeches and all this shit. So do you think she's going to get to a point where she's like, you know what, my job's done. Like I've done the work and we're where we need to be. Fuck no, because her bank account's going to fucking tell her differently.
No, she's going to
write another fucking book and say, look, we're making strides, but this is what we need to do. Part 2, White Fragility's fucking even more like.
Well, dude, I think you're so right in what you're saying, because what I think's actually going on now is it's like people were like, oh, we're pretty much there. And now these people are writing books. So it goes back even into your theory of that experiment where you just keep passing the pictures with no problems in them and you're finding problems. And it's like, we got to a place where we were like, things seem to be a lot better. And these people are now writing books like, here's why it's not better. And you think it is, you know what I mean? Right. And it's like going deeper into like shit that don't make any sense,
Right. Like rocks. Like I just saw a college that moved like a giant rock.
Come on, bro.
For being racist. And I'm just like,
how could you
who the fuck walks up by that rock and be like, that fucking racist ass rock? Like,
and if you have any kind of a brain, how could you remember, somebody probably had to give a speech. Like somebody probably came out and was like, we finally today have realized the error of our ways. Like I would be like, it's a rock.
Well,
I don't know what's going on.
And here is the perfect thing to sum up kind of like what's going on in where the left is headed. Here was a fucking Thomas Chatterton William. He's like an author. He is an American. He's mixed, black and white. He lives in France, but I've heard him on podcasts. He's an intellectual. So there was this trend that I found on Twitter. And this, I can't really tell the nationality of this person that tweeted it. But she looks ethnic, and based off her name, I'm judging it too. And she said, "Why did a white woman write a cookbook about dumplings and noodles?" Right. So somebody tweeted, commented, and said, "Laugh my ass off. The woman has been learning East, South, Southeast Asian cooking for over 15 years and attended an actual fucking noodle school in China. It's like you think it's impossible for anyone who isn't Chinese to be just as versed in prepping dumplings as anyone of the culture." So she then tweeted, "Anyway, therapy cost me $130 a session, and I'm going to need it after almost 48 hours of harassment from Nazis." So this guy, Thomas Chatterton Williams, tweeted her, and he was like, you racialize a stranger, publicly disrespect their entire career, receive backlash, refuse to apologize, dig in deeper and paint yourself as the victim in a gratuitous pile and in a gratuitous pile-on started. Then you coup de grace, you solicit donations from strangers to finance your self-care. That is the epitome of the left in America right now. Like, everybody's a fucking victim, and it's just, dude, it's tragic. And like, and you know, a lot of things with the COVID thing, like, that I've had kind of like a realization of, like, I understand how fear works. I've been a very fearful person throughout my life. I didn't get on a plane till I was 30 years old. At the beginning of the pandemic, like, I was nervous, and I was panicking. So, like, I understand that there are a shit ton of people that are panicking. And I understand that there's, maybe your mother's in healthcare, your spouse, your friend, whoever is a nurse or a doctor, and they come home and they're like, "Oh man, if these people just would take the shot, or if these people would just wear a mask, this would all be taken care of." I understand that in your world, that's the reality. But then you have somebody like me who, like, I just inboxed somebody who I know that works in a hospital in the city. And I was like, "Are your COVID cases going through the roof?" And she was like, "No, not that I'm aware of." I just got tested on Monday, and the nurse was like, "I've done 1 million of these, and I haven't had one negative test." Like, so in my world, all the people that I know that got it survived. They really weren't bad. Some were, but most people survived. The people that I talk to that are in healthcare aren't having issues with it. But I also recognize that that's my small world that I'm living in. You know what I mean? There's a big fucking picture out there. So, like, you have these people that are completely fucking paranoid and fucking listening to CNN all night fucking long. And then the friend that they know is at a hospital where it's tragic, and they just knew that somebody just fucking died. And the person said, "Oh my God, if I just took the shot." So then they go on fucking Instagram, they go on Facebook, and they're like, "Oh my God, they're making it worse for all of us, and we need to get our act together." What act together? Everybody that I talk to, and in my world that I'm living in, that's not the case.
Yeah.
How the fuck can you tell me to trust the science when, like, they've been lying? Our government and everything has just been just lies about everything.
Well, I guess what you're saying is, I've never trusted my government, but I do when I go into my world and I don't trust something, and then somebody says to me, "Nah, man, you really need to make sure you do that," because and then you figure, like, in other words, like, I don't sit there and take my orders from the media or from whatever. I take my advice from the people around me who I trust, who I've always taken advice from. And also, a lot of the people that think I'm supposed to heed their advice are people that would really hurt their feelings if they understood what I really thought of their advice because of how it had led me to things in the past to find out that it wasn't true,
Yeah.
And so, but I'm not saying that they're wrong. I'm just saying like, leave me be to my, it's just weird. And the sad part is one thing I really agree with you on too, is like the people, the sad part is I see that these people are afraid. Like, I'm not going to mention any names or anything, but I recently really saw someone be very afraid. And I realized like, that's what's making this problem is like, they're very afraid and nobody's like, this is the thing. They're afraid. And then they're looking back to their politicians that they take advice from and their media sources that they take advice from. And instead of them saying, relax, take a breath. As long as you did what you got to do, you're like, in other words, what if somebody was to come out right now and go like, look, we want people to get vaccinated. We think that they should get vaccinated. However, we've noticed a lot of fear and a lot of people being a lot of anxiety over the fact that they now have the vaccine and they're afraid that the unvaccinated might spread it or whatever. Just be assured that if you are they're pushing that the unvaccinated are dying and spreading the disease. How about reassuring the people who are vaccinated that everything's going to be okay? We just think it would be better for everyone if the unvaccinated got vaccinated. However, the unvaccinated are a little more at stake now. Like, rather than it being a concern for the unvaccinated, it's just like what I really feel is going on is, and I was, it's funny, I'm just thinking about this now, but what I really think is going on, which is sad, because I wanted to make my plea to those that are vaccinated right now, that be aware that I really believe you're being conditioned to do the bidding that the government can't. Like, the government can't make us get vaccinated, but they can make you be so afraid that you can act as an arm of them and force it on others,
Right.
And that's what I think is going on is, rather than taking the approach of, let me calm down my people, let me reassure them that if they're vaccinated, they're in a way better position than being unvaccinated. And we just believe it will be better for everyone to be vaccinated. However, the case may be that we might not be able to get everyone to be vaccinated. And we think that that's not a good idea. However, for those of you that are vaccinated, relax. You know what I mean?
Well,
no,
yeah.
They're like firing up the vaccinated to hate the unvaccinated. Doesn't make any sense.
Well, and one last great point that Zuby made earlier when in comparison to the reactions in Europe and to COVID and to the United States. And he was saying Europe is a little more compliant for the simple reason that they don't have the rights that we have.
Yeah.
They look to their government for their rights. Whereas here, we were established to have God-given rights. Theirs are government-given rights. God-given rights here in America, as an individual born in this country, you are completely free. Now, obviously, there's restrictions on the decisions that you make and how you live your life, but the government cannot infringe on your freedom. And that's a problem, because there's a lot of people that think, yeah, the government should come in and take care of us. They should come in and do whatever the hell they need to do to make me safe. They don't completely understand how this works, especially when you look at somebody like New Zealand. Like I texted you the other day, they had one case and they locked the fuck down again.
Yeah.
One fucking case. And that was a case, not a death, a case. And they locked the fuck down. And, I don't want to keep beating this dead horse, because I did want to talk about the Netflix series.
Well, I think we should come back to the Netflix thing. I think we should do even another one if we come back and do it, because I don't want to cheat it either. I don't want to rush it in.
Well, I mean, dude, I feel like we just might as well just go with it.
All right.
because it's kind of goes with the theme of kind of like a lot of things that we've just been mentioning. And I watched it, while Danny was fucking living his best life out in Austin. I watched
Austin Weird.
Yeah, man. I watched a pretty cool documentary on Netflix. It was called Malice at the Palace, which took place in Detroit. And for a lot of people that don't know, in 2004, there was a major brawl in the NBA. Players went into the stands and were fighting with the fans. And some of the backstory was, so it was the Indiana Pacers and the Detroit Pistons. The year before, Indiana was kind of building a kind of hard-nosed team. Reggie Miller was a classy veteran who's always been struggling to kind of get his ring. They put some tough-nosed guys around him. And Jermaine O'Neal, who was a young up-and-coming star center, and Ron Artest, who is now known as Meta World Peace. And he was a hothead. But they were kind of like enforcers. So that year, they had a tough physical team. They went all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. And Detroit, who was also another strong physical team, beat them. So the following year, 2004, the first game back after they lost, they go to Detroit, Indiana. They bring on Steven Jackson, who was another hothead physical player. And they go in there, and everybody that was in the stands was talking about, dude, it was electric. I mean, there was just a really intense vibe for that game. And the Indiana Pacers, they came out, they were starting to whoop on Detroit. There was a little bit of altercations kind of going on a little bit before the game, a little jibber jabbering. And then at one point, somebody on the Pacers, I forget who it was, mentioned to Ron Artest, like, yo, now you can kind of get your foul, because they already had the game in hand. It's getting late. So he took a hard foul against somebody. I think it was Ben Wallace, who was another guy who was like, not a guy to fuck with. And there was kind of a player brawl that kind of started, but which is pretty common. I mean, you see that all in the NBA today. Players get heated, hard foul happens, pushing, shoving, occasionally maybe a punch is thrown. But it's a lot of players, like they don't really want to get in these big brawls because they're going to lose money, they're going to get ejected, they're going to lose, So it's a lot of show. Well, Ron Artest, after things were kind of like getting separated, he goes and lays down on the announcer's table, which was kind of like a weird approach. But his explanation was kind of like, well, I kind of looked at it like, I got all my boys taking care of my dirty work. I'm just going to lay back and let this play out. A fan from the stands throws a bottle, hits him on his chest. So he runs up kind of and sees a fan and thinks that was him. He attacks a fan up in a couple of stands. Then after that, players are running up after to protect their friends. It kind of gets broken up off of the stands back onto the court. Everybody's up on the court. Now there's fans on the court, and there was one fan in particular that kind of looked like he was kind of like running up and looked like he was about to like square off.
100% he was.
Like if I was Ron Artest, like I probably would have assumed that like he was going to come to punch me. So Jermaine O'Neal, another player, comes, runs out of nowhere, socks this guy. So again, now more punches are being thrown. Basically, and then the cops were involved, and the cops were grabbing the players. Now, the players, of course, were pissed at the cops, but the cops thing were, look, we need to get the players out of this arena because you are escalating the situation. There's fucking thousands of fans that are going to go, as long as the players are around, it's going to escalate things.
And we can't handle this many people, period.
Yeah, there was a fucking handful of security. And, you know, so like there were players that were pissed, like, what the fuck are you grabbing me for? Like, I'm having shit thrown at me. Like, people were coming at me, not realizing the situation, not a police officer, not trained in knowing how to, like, we have to fucking de-escalate this situation. We got to get you the fuck out of here. So again, they're pulling the players out. Finally, coaches, everybody, they're trying to walk through. There's chairs being thrown. There's drinks, everything. Another guy ran up in the fucking sand after a chair was being thrown. It was just a fucking absolute mess. It was one of the biggest stories in 2004 in sports. And still to this day, I mean, it's huge. Obviously, that's why there's a documentary. Now, at the time, the press was just crushed the NBA, crushed the players. Ron Artest, I believe, was suspended for a year. Other players were suspended for like 20 games. It was a huge deal. No matter where you turned, kind of like COVID, kind of like Afghanistan, kind of like police brutality. Every fucking channel you turned on was talking about the players and they were thugs. The NBA changed the dress code. Everything was these players need to be done away with. It's, you know, the NBA needs to make drastic changes. They completely demonized these guys. And that's not to say that they didn't have some blame. I mean, obviously, you're a millionaire, you're getting paid millions of dollars. Somebody throws something at you, like, you need to have, you got to be able to control yourself better than to go up in a fucking stand and start punching people. But that's the thing. Once now, years later, when they start showing footage, and even in some of the court cases, because some of these players actually had to go for lawsuits, once judges started to see video and started to see chairs being thrown and started to see, you know, this one guy approach the player as though he could have been an aggressor, then it became self-defense. However, the opinion in the media, the opinion of the general public, nobody saw it that way. They weren't there for the court cases. They weren't there how the law broke these things down. And many of these players, especially Jermaine O'Neal in particular, who had a pretty clean image, I feel really bad for him because he was like, man, this ruined, like, in the documentary, like, he seemed like he really carries a heavy weight.
Yeah, like even they felt, even like the other people were saying, I feel for him.
Yeah, because, you know, Ron Artest left and won a championship with the Lakers, because I understand, I get it. He was like, everything about this situation felt too heavy. Like, I just couldn't. First of all, he had mental health issues, and he talks about that a lot. And you know, it's something that he had to go to therapy for. So these are also things that, you know, maybe at the time people aren't really aware of. You see the video, you're quick to judge. You're like, oh, these fucking assholes, these thugs, whatever. But this dude really had some mental issues. And he, which I didn't even remember seeing, won the championship with the Lakers the next year. And he straight up on the interview, he was like, I kind of feel like a coward. Like, I feel like I let my teammates down in Indiana. That, you know.
Yeah, that part shocked me too. I didn't remember that.
Neither did I. I didn't remember that at all.
Which also made me more think a little bit about the whole media thing, because maybe they didn't want you to see that as much. Like, in other words, I'm sure it was there live and shit, but why wasn't that a constant viral thing shared all over the place or something, you know?
Absolutely. Because it's going to humanize them more.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
It's going to take away from the narrative that at the time, these NBA players, they were all fucking thugs and a disgrace, and they have bad images. And look, realistically, there were a lot of guys in the NBA, in particular, Allen Iverson, that kind of like ushered in this new look with all the tattoos and the hip hop culture. And look, in a lot of ways, a lot of the players didn't do themselves justice. They were getting in altercations outside, you know, of basketball, and shootings and, you know, fights and being arrested by cops. So like, yeah. So obviously if those types of things are happening more frequently, it's obviously going to draw a lot of negative attention to the NBA. And then this situation happens and you're like, oh, there they go again. These fucking NBA guys, these thugs. But realistically, like, look, I think that they should have showed more judgment, but you're also young guys. They were heated from fighting. There was a lot of emotion in that building. And it was really, really good documentary. It was a really, really cool look at how that whole thing broke down and how even going through the court and how the judge was, they they did find one of the guys that was on the court. They found him like guilty. And they reduced some of the sentences on some of these players. And I think it shows a lot that back in 2004, and now we're revisiting it in a documentary in 2021, and how important it is to like see different sides of the angles, and how important it is to see how the media at that time was everywhere and spun it in such a way that these guys were wrong, that the NBA they got a problem. And you look at that now, and I wonder how we're going to view police brutality. You know what I mean? Like, and because how many videos have we watched where like initially it looks bad, and then fucking people on social media are going crazy, and politicians to get reelected are like saying whatever the fuck they need to say to get elected. So they're fucking tossing gasoline on the fire, and it's just fucking raging.
Well, that's
and then more evidence comes out, and you're like, well, maybe this isn't just one-sided.
Well, that's even like, didn't the NBA basically chose to not take their side, basically because it was like, we can't go against the fans right now.
Exactly.
Right. So, but where I would say that this completely full circle is exactly what we're dealing with now in a weird way, is like, you got like, one of the things that stuck out to me was when I believe it was it Jermaine O'Neal, you said, or whatever.
Yeah.
Remember when he said they didn't follow them court cases though? Where was the media then and all, right?
Yeah.
So we live in a world where the media blast out the story and condemns you. Then the talking heads go around and condemn you. And then we forget that like in other words, you're innocent until proven guilty, And if the media just no longer covers this process, and the process eventually proves these people innocent, but they're forever guilty,
Mm-hmm.
And then me and you both agree. Like, I could sit here and tell you that like, this is what I believe they should have done. You know what I mean? But, or like when the cops were trying to get him off the court, how they're like, don't grab me, it wasn't me, type of thing. And it's like, well, just go in the fucking thing, because you need to get the players off the court. Well, what I feel is it's the same thing that's going on right now. And not to make it about it's an example to use the vaxxed unvaxxed situation or something. It's like, I understand that everybody has an opinion of what I should do. But at the end of the day, I have rights. So in other words, I believe that Ron Artest should have done something differently. However, Ron Artest has a right, in my mind, to, like, in other words, you could sit there and say, yeah, but he makes millions of dollars. Ron Artest has the same rights as you, whether he makes $1 million or not.
Oh, absolutely.
So if somebody does something to him, you might not agree. You might want him to be the bigger man or want him to whatever.
Right.
Just like someone can disagree with the way I'm living my life at the moment. However, at the end of the day, I have rights. I have the right to as long as I am doing what is within my right as a human being, then I don't really care what your opinion of me is. And so everybody could say what they thought these people should have done. However, in the end, they weren't actually wrong by what they had the right to do.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so like, yeah, I mean, it can be debated on what the best advice, like, in other words, you could, if somebody punches you in the face, I can sit there and advise you not to swing back and say that you need to be the bigger man and yada, yada, yada. But if you punch that person back and lay them out, I mean, I can still have an opinion of what you should have done. However, what you had a right to do and what I think you should have done are two different things. And when the law proves you to be right, I mean, you shouldn't still be condemned. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or whatever. But yeah, but the other thing too that I saw from that is, even though I still have my opinion of what should have went on, whatever, you definitely the one thing that really stuck out to me was that wasn't just a situation where they fucked with some fans. That was a situation where like that whole stadium was ready to get that, was just ready to do something to them guys. Right. And they were actually in a situation where $1 million players or not, that's a scary situation. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. It was yeah. I mean, like I said, it was a hostile environment from the year before and the battle and the 7-game loss. Coming into that game, like all the players were like, dude, there was a feeling in that arena. Like it was electric. Like everybody was on edge.
And so I don't know if I feel like it is, but I guess the way I rounded home into the situation that we're in now is like, that whole stadium wanted to kill them. So their best option was for them to cover their heads and run into the locker room as fast as possible, because that would have been best for everyone's health and whatever. However, their reaction was, I ain't the problem. These motherfuckers, like, get your fucking hands off me. And I'm about to knock somebody the fuck out. They throw another thing at me, Yeah. And so it's like, I can sit here and say, dude, but what you're supposed to do is cover your head and run away, because that's best. But because they chose not to do that, that doesn't make them bad people. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah. And
but how, again, how it ties into everything that we've been talking about. I guarantee you that if that were to happen today, the narrative would be different, especially because, we're much more, racially sensitive. So considering that they were black players and, the majority of the people that were the fans were white, I don't think that the media would be calling these black players thugs and harping on them. I think there would have been much more blame put on the fans just based off of the climate today. And, so my point is, with the way the public opinion, it always changes. You know what I mean? And the media has a lot of power in determining how that sways. It goes and it can easily look 10 years from now, we could be talking about COVID in a completely different way. We could be like, I can't believe that we were forcing people to take it. You know what I mean? When clinical trials, even if it gets approved, clinical trials really haven't set to end until 2023. So yes, it still kind of is testing phase. Like, you know what I mean? So like 10 years from now, 15 years from now, if there are, side effects of the vaccines or anything, I guarantee you the media, especially politicians, because they're going to want to cover their ass, especially some may still be around then. They're going to be like, well, we had to do it for public safety, blah, blah, blah. Things change. And that's what just really scares me in this climate right now, that like people, when tragedy strikes, things are heated, climate's fucking rough, like it's fucking hot, people are fucking angry, they're fucking scared. People make judgment calls. They're emotional, they're not rational. And this is a lot worse than the Malice of the Palace when it comes to COVID, based off of the media presentation, how it was politicized, and how dividing it is as a country. And it's just sad, man. And I just can't, I don't know that I'll ever be able to really get through to somebody that's, is all for the vaccines, that can't see the argument that I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm just somebody that doesn't trust the government, that don't trust the media. And I would much rather wait to see how this plays out for there's, a couple years down the road, especially when I'm in an age range, and the fact that I do keep myself in good health. I feel like I'm, in the event that I call COVID, I would be okay. Well, that's the way I feel.
Well, when you say I don't there's the thing. People hear you say, I don't trust the media, I don't trust the government. They think the wrong thing right away. But I know what you mean. And it's more like this, I'll speak for myself, but I feel like, just to kind of make that person understand more what we mean. I don't trust them enough to do something that I wouldn't do at this juncture, but only do it because they tell me to. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying I don't trust the government, I don't trust whatever, everybody's out to get you. No, what I'm saying is I haven't come to my conclusion on whether I personally don't feel confident in the advice or the people that are telling me what I should do. However, now that they're trying to force it on me, I don't trust. I haven't gotten there, and I'm not getting there just because now they're telling me to, and then you're telling me that I need to trust these people. I don't trust these people. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't trust these people that my best interest is what they're worried about. No, there are people, yeah,
but because they're covering their asses. They're not covering mine. They're covering their mess up.
And there are people, and they're not crazy people, and there are people that I've trusted in the past, and they've led me to the right places, and they have a similar feeling of mine. I haven't had anyone try and convince me otherwise. I mean, I hate to even say it, but it's like, I do trust Rogan. You know what I mean? Like, I know that sounds bad, but there's somebody that I trust. He talks to a lot of whatever. He doesn't seem to feel that it's a necessary thing for everyone to be vaccinated. That doesn't mean that I'm listening to Rogan. What I mean is it's one source of information that somebody would probably dismiss. Oh, he's listening to Rogan. No, that's not what I mean. I mean, Rogan has talked to people, think about the access that he has around him. If people would be saying to him right now, dude, you're wrong, bro. You need to get, and he would come and I trust that he would say that, And
that's I don't trust Rogan. I trust the Rogan podcast because of the people that he has on.
Yeah, and I trust that Rogan knows enough people that he would come and he would say, well, he seems to be pretty ready to take this vaccination shit head on, and he's been vaccinated himself.
Has he?
He's been vaccinated. I remember him saying it in the beginning anyway. Oh. But his thing is that people in certain age, he said regardless, but he was vaccinated, but very early on he was vaccinated. But now you got me thinking, but I'm pretty sure he's vaccinated.
No, regardless.
but either way, yeah, I know that sounds weird that I'm saying I trust Rogan, but you get what I'm saying. I trust that when he talks about it, and in fairness, Rogan doesn't say don't get it. I'm saying I watch his show when he has certain people on, and I know that sometimes when he adds information, he only adds information if he feels it's 100 whatever. And, he doesn't believe, or the people that have been, forget it. I'm getting lost on talking about Rogan in a sense. But what I'm just saying is I'm sorry, but I would listen to Joe Rogan before I would listen to fucking Nancy Pelosi. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. But I'm going to take him and the people on his shows advice before I'm going to take Pelosi's. Right. But regardless, the other thing the last thing I'll end with that 2004 Malice in the Palace. We didn't have iPhones during Malice in the Palace.
Yeah.
I don't know if we had Twitter. I don't know if we had Facebook to the extent we have them now.
Right.
What I want people to understand is that the media had control of the narrative 100% at that time. And when the media had control of the narrative in the way they did then, it was a different time. And the media lost control of the narrative when Facebook and Twitter and all these things took off. And so one of the things that the guys kept saying is, I just want everybody to see the video for themselves. I want them to see all of this for themselves.
Right.
And then we lived in a world for about a good amount of time where that's what started to happen. You could see for yourself. Even bringing up Afghanistan right now, if people weren't able to take certain videos like we've been seeing over there, this eruption in our media would not have happened. The only reason why there's an eruption is because you can't deny what you're seeing. So if the media had control over what we were seeing, all we would be getting is our talking heads coming out, or Biden and them coming out saying, hey, this is like, we wouldn't know of how much of a catastrophe it was. So what I am afraid of is basically, if in the world we live in today, if you allow Twitter and these guys to keep censoring mother humpers and whatever else, what would happen is all those people's videos of the actual events that happen would start to be getting removed, because the NBA and Facebook and Twitter have a fucking big contract, and the NBA would say this shit needs to come down. And this way the media would then be able to regain control of the narrative. So what people don't understand is this is why censorship and everything is important. This is why these little things where you go, well, so what? They shouldn't be sharing that. The whole thing is, we live in a world now where you can share what you saw and it's undeniable. And we can watch all of these kind of videos and make up our minds for ourselves. In 2004, these guys were begging for people to just show the whole video, but they weren't going to. Nobody would, because they had control of the narrative. Now we live in a world where they could possibly, but you could actually, by starting to say, I think this person should be taken down and that person should be taken down, this should be taken down, you're creating an environment where it's okay to take things down. And that's what I believe the big push is right now that's going on in the world, is the media and the government is trying to get back a hold of the narrative, because as long as we, the people, can just post shit online and have it freely just go on the internet, they can't control that. And so if we lived in, when you said what would happen if this happened now, well, I can guarantee you at the very least, the other side of the story would be just as relevant, and we'd be debating it online, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
But you watched Malice in the Palace. Did you watch Deal with the Devil?
No, I don't even know what that is.
It's the next one. Apparently, this is a series that they're doing with sports, kind of like a 30 for 30. Watch it. It's amazing. It's a story I never knew about a woman boxer that Tyson wanted on his card, and this girl has a crazy life. You got to watch it.
It's on Netflix?
Look, yeah, it's called Deal with the Devil. It's literally like right next to Malice. When I played Malice in the Palace, afterwards, it was like, this is what was up next if I didn't hit the button.
I was gonna watch that. And apparently there's a Q documentary.
I watched that already. Yeah, the one that Rogan was talking about.
Yeah.
I thought it was on HBO or something. Maybe it's on Netflix.
No, it's on HBO Max.
But dude, there's one more documentary that I want everyone to see that hasn't come out yet, that I haven't seen, but I know it's going to be great. I seen this Bob Ross trailer or something, and I hit it. And dude, apparently, you know who Bob Ross is? Happy Little Trees.
Yeah, of course.
Well, dude, I don't know what it is, but I'm real excited because it says, we'd like to show you this trailer, but we can't. See why on August 24th. And then you just hear Bob Ross's voice go, I've been waiting for so many years to tell this story. And apparently it's about how he had to fight for his empire. So I'm imagining that he must have been like totally contractually fucked by whoever he was doing his thing for. And that's why you've probably never seen him or his image outside of that show. So I'm very intrigued. August 24th. Don't miss the Bob Ross Happy Little Trees and Greed or something it's called. I'm very excited.
I have a Bob Ross t-shirt.
Dude, I'm telling you right now, it looks like it's going to be amazing.
He was like the most calming adult figure in my life as a kid.
We're just
sit
building.
there.
We're just
sit
making
there
a little tree. Just
Yeah.
don't try and make it. Just try and let it grow. Let it see. Give it some sun. But yeah, all right. Well, it was a short one.
What was it? What are we about? What are we pushing to? At least over 2 hours.
Oh my God, well over 2 hours.
Well, yeah, we've been going for a little while, so it's going to go a little bit long. So, like, for the people that are bearing with us, break it off in parts.
Yeah, listen to 10, 20 minutes that you want to listen to, and then don't listen to the other stuff.
Yeah.
Come back,
Yeah.
All right, dude. Well, love you, Tom. We'll catch up later, and love you.
All right. Thanks for support, guys.
Yeah, guys. Thanks a lot. I can't wait. Want to keep you posted on my Austin action, and stay non-vaxxed later.